mesmerizing run by the quarterback.
Marvin Harrison Jr. touchdown. Marvelous
Home next to the end zone. Drop down for Franklin. A majestic touchdown.
This is Chasing the Natty, a college fantasy football podcast.
Here we go. All right, welcome in, everybody. This is Jared Palmgren, host of the Chasing Natty podcast. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Oh my God, I just went into full autopilot there, y'all. I hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday night here. I hope you're not having a ride to work at 8 o'clock at night on a Sunday. Y'all, you have no idea how hectic tonight has been between this draft, between CTN's editing today has been just an absolute struggle bus for me in terms of the uploading and everything like that. It has been a night. We got a awesome show for you guys tonight. I got Jeremy Miller and Mr. William Barnett, aka Willie B and J Mill. You guys know them more likely as the folks over at CFFlists on Twitter. They've been doing a fantastic job with their graphics, breaking down each of the conferences, each of the positions. It's been absolutely phenomenal stuff that they have been doing here recently. So we have them both on. They both have a team tonight. I'm actually taking a step back tonight because I needed to there was somebody at the last minute wanted to hop in. I figured two of us were already had a team for this stream, so I'm like, you know what? I'll step back. I'll let the other person have a team, and you two will be drafting, and I'll be here to sit here and judge.
Okay, all right.
But still, we'll start. Jeremy, we'll start with you, man. How you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm good. I feel about as hectic as everybody else tonight. I know we had some weird fan tracks issues going on, but I told my wife earlier when she said, "Oh, I'm going to leave the house because I know you got to get prepared." I told her, if you stay prepared, you don't have to get prepared. So here we go.
Willie, how you doing tonight, man? Willie, can you hear me?
Uh-oh. Oh, I'm doing wonderful. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay,
it kind of froze there for a second, but yeah, we're all good. Ready to go. My partner in crime here, I guess he is ready to go because I didn't have to get with him to sort my own list, so we're ready.
All righty. Well, for those of you who haven't joined us here before tonight, we are the way this works. Again, they'll be drafted. I usually draft along with them, but again, tonight I'm taking a step back, and we are just here to hang out. We'll draft. We'll talk about the players that we're drafting and everything. But this is also a great time for those of you who maybe are getting back into CFF, have maybe taken a break since the off season's kicked off, or trying to come back here in late July, early August, catch up on everything. It's a great opportunity for you to go ahead and put down in the chat some of those questions that you have been dying to ask. Again, we got 3 CFF experts here, all of which bring different perspectives. I can't even imagine Jeremy and Willie trying to come up with consensus for all of their graphics and stuff like that. So now you got 3. You got 3 different voices to hear tonight.
Yeah, and that's interesting because we do our averages. If anybody looks at those, I don't know if we've got any kind of audience, but if anybody sees those, it really is just a 2-person average. Surprisingly, our rankings are pretty similar. We both try to do them independently and then, come up with the average for our final rankings. Very few players are really more than, plus or minus 6 or 7, from one another. So, but we do have some that end up like 30 or 40 spots away from one another, which is always interesting. And we end up talking about those in a lot more depth and try to figure out kind of where we should settle on a final ranking.
No, absolutely makes sense. Willie, is that it from your perspective, or is J Mill making the process sound too polite?
No. I mean, it's a little hard to do that. I mean, hell, we've basically been best friends for what, damn near 35 years. So,
Right.
yeah, well, I mean, we kind of have one brain most of the time, but yeah, there are a lot of times, or not a lot of times, but there are a few times where we are, kind of miles apart, and we just, kind of reevaluate and figure out, what we missed, what we didn't, and then kind of try to get a little closer. But some of them stay 30 apart, and it is what it is.
Yeah, and then the average just becomes the average. So we, got to deal with it.
Makes sense. Real quick, can y'all think of one player that you're 30 spots apart on that comes to mind?
Man, I'm trying to think
quick here.
You jumping in?
Yeah. I'm jumping on here. Yeah, just go ahead, and I'll get back with you in just 1 second. But let's see. I know for sure. I'd say Farouk is one. That's just off the top. That's just top of my head that I just wasn't going to budge on a little bit.
We'll have to get into that later.
Yeah, that's just one in particular, because I do remember not changing my mind on that at all.
All righty, I'll break that down here in a second. But again, got a couple more people joining into the chat. We'll get to your questions, Austin and Cody, here in just a second. But the draft will be beginning here in roughly about 2 minutes from now. So we'll probably get through the first round, maybe second round, and then we'll start hopping into some of those questions. But Willie, what's the deal with Farouk? Like, is it like, are you not high on him? Do you think there's somebody else on Oklahoma that we need to be targeting? Or like, is it that Jay Mills the sourpuss and doesn't like him? Jay Mills the sourpuss. So okay,
he definitely is.
Jeremy, so this is the question for you then. What's wrong with Farouk?
No, I don't think anything's wrong with Farouk. I just find that Lebby doesn't do much better than Riley, in my opinion, and like really finding one receiver to hone in on. So I'm just a little gun shy when it comes to like Oklahoma and USC receivers to this day, because I think the targets are spread out too thin. So I'm looking now, like, so this is a perfect example he brought up. I've got him 83rd. Willie's got him 34th. So he ends up 57th on our list.
Third, yeah. That is. Woof. Woof,
yeah.
Woof, woof.
Okay, I say this though, if we're that high on Gabriel, who's he throwing the ball to?
Mm-hmm.
So you can't just let that slide when we're doing our receiver rankings. So if we're that high on Gabriel, we can't have his one or two target down in the 80s.
Or if you're that high on Gabriel and you don't think Farouk is the clear number one guy, who else is there? Who else is he throwing to?
I like I say, I don't see. It's not Stoops.
It's not Stoops.
So
right. Hey, maybe I need to reevaluate. It's not Bunkley Shelton.
And we know Stogner left for a reason. So I mean, it's going to be I just don't see one of the younger guys overtaking Farouk.
All right, draft is kicked off here. Ethan Sowers, the first pick of the draft, takes Malachi Corley. That might be the first time in one of these that we've not seen Caleb Williams going 101. Let's see.
I think that's a case of Ethan being in too many drafts and he just wants to shake things up now.
Maybe, but like, I was talking about it with Malachi Corley the other day. Like, I've moved him to my wide receiver 1 recently. Again, it's the one thing I couldn't shake with Ohio State is what they did with JSN last year and Travion Henderson, where it's like the moment they got nicked up, they just shut it down. Ohio State can live without some of these top players, even as talented as guys as Marvin Harrison Jr. Western Kentucky can't do what they want to do without a guy like Malachi Corley.
That's true. He's our number one guy. He's our number one guy.
I would say so. I moved him to my number one recently.
Yeah, we both had Corley number 1. I mean that was just
that wasn't up for debate. Yeah, that wasn't up for debate.
All right, Willie B, you're on the clock here, sir. You're at the 105, and Jamie, I believe you are at the 110. So we got a
110,
nice little spread out here across the draft. So Willie B, you're on the clock, sir. What are you thinking here? What are you looking at?
Well, I figured I could get Reed or Williams, but that didn't happen. So I got to have my top tier. So we're definitely going Penix Jr. here.
Okay, interesting.
All right.
mean,
on that note, Jared, have you seen Harrison ever slide to, past 3?
He slid to 1-7 last week, which surprised me. I'm not ready to see him go to that late 2 weeks in a row. That's going to feel very, very wrong. I'm going to wonder, just because I moved Malachi Corley ahead of Harrison. Okay, there he goes, finally. Thank God the slide stops. But,
I feel like we're under more pressure with you not having a team, Jared.
I know, right? Like, I'm relaxing a little bit over here.
Yeah, like all you can do is critique and analyze here.
Hey, I'm down to do that. But again, like, Harrison Jr. to me is still a top 3 pick. Because again, for me, it's Caleb, Corley, and Marvin. Like, those are the top 3 picks for me.
Right.
So to see him slide to 6, Quinshon Judkins falling to 7 there. I'm surprised.
Right.
I'm surprised Judkins lasted as long as he did. Some of the quarterbacks, maybe. Willie B, you took Penix in the first round. I've started seeing him slide into the second round. I think that's because he doesn't really offer a ton of rushing upside, even though his passing numbers were absolutely bonkers last season. Knowing that, would you have tried to get him in the second round, see if he fell to you in the second round, or were you still good about getting him at 105?
No, I feel like, if you have a guy, it's you take your guy. I'm not as large on that ADP as most, only because I feel like, especially in the vacuum that some can get in, everybody kind of says, okay, well, I know this guy's going to slide. Well, if you get outside of that bubble, you don't know that guy's going to slide.
Mm-hmm. Fair point.
So I feel like I just want to take my guys when they're available.
Fair point.
Yeah, Tracy, Willie is the most probably anti-ADP guy that there is.
That hurts my feelings, Willie B, because I have done a lot the last couple of years to build up ADP for college fantasy.
No, but here's the thing. The way we've gotten over the last 2 years, okay, think about where we're going to be in 3 more years. Okay, how that's going to grow. So when we have about 4 or 5 ecosystems, then we can start combining those and getting a true ADP. That's what I mean.
Well, so he thinks that our ADP is in a bubble.
Well, I would argue that we already start having that a little bit, because I know a lot of the CFF side, they do their own best ball drafts and everything like that. They have like their own followers and everything that kind of get mixed in there. I got people here who do these drafts every Sunday or try to do every Sunday. The best balls I did throughout, like the slow drafts and everything like that, had a really good mix of people, and like they cross over and everything, so you get a really good mix at the end of the day. I think I agree with you that like it's even better than it was last year in terms of how many people are involved here. So, J-Mill, you took Raheem Sanders. Is back to you already. What are you looking at here?
I'm ecstatic that I thought I was going to miss out on a top tier receiver, which we've kind of all been emphasizing is kind of tough to find in these first couple of rounds. Somebody that you're guaranteed will produce numbers. I couldn't be happier with getting Sanders, who was our collective RB1, and then coming back around and getting Cowing, who was, I think, our overall wide receiver 4. So, I'm really happy to get that. I think you got to go and get a top-notch receiver early if you can, because the guys that came back this year, I think 8 of the top 10 are gone, from last year. So the proven guys are much more limited. So you got to get a proven guy early if you can.
Yeah, for sure. Because again, last year we lose Dell, we lose Hyatt, we lose Rice, we lose Jones, Flowers, Stokes, Hutchinson, and Perry. You're right. That's 8 of the top 12 right there.
Right.
But we did get the next year we had quite a few come back. Corley, Odunze, McMillan, Cowing, Wigless, all those guys right there.
Yeah. It's interesting. The top 10 is pretty sparse, but once you get into like kind of the next group that fill out the top 24, I think you've got maybe 8 or 9 out of that next 12 that are there. But to get that elite group that you really don't have to think about, if they're going to get 9 or 10 targets a game. That's the group that's limited, is the ones you don't have to worry about or kind of project.
Real quick, Jeremy, before Willie gets on the clock here and I have him talk about his pick and everything, you talked about like reaching up and getting one of those elite receivers and everything. Well, we just saw 2 elite tight ends come off the board there, Bowers and Gadsden. Are you okay with missing out on those 2 guys? Because you had the chance to take one of them.
Yeah, I'm okay missing out on those guys. because I think the next 2 or 3 are very close in terms of what they can produce this year. I know we're kind of live here and guys can be listening, but that's kind of the fun of this. But
Exactly.
I think Conyers, Kuthi, and even Urasek are very close to that level. So, I wasn't going to reach and take a tight end there when I feel like, getting a top-notch wide receiver was even more difficult at this point.
Fair point. All right, Willie B., you just took Frank Gore Jr. What do you think about it?
I think his stock is just still going to rise. He is obviously a 1,000-yard back. I'd anticipate maybe 1,200 yards. I would hope double digits for his touchdowns, and then his reception total hopefully will kick in a little bit.
Yeah, and I know on Gore, Jared, people have been talking about how like his overall average came from like a certain percentage of games, but we like to look at how guys finish the season, and his last 4 games, he had 19, 21, 31, and then 47. So you saw him progressing every game from those final 4 games on, and just to even finish with like a 20-point game, a 30-point game, and a 40-point game to end the season. We don't think that part's a fluke. And I know, like I said, a lot of guys think that, his average came from, just a handful of games, but I'm glad that those handful of games were all at the end of the season.
And I think that's a very fair point, but I would also argue back in 2021, he finished very strong there with 2 really monster games towards the end of the season, especially when they had the super back kind of going strong with him there. But
True.
But again, like Willie said, if you're in on a guy, go ahead and grab him here because he ain't gonna fall to you probably in the 3rd, 4th round. At least what I've been seeing. Alrighty, boys.
He's only going to get better and stronger. So,
alrighty, let's see. We made it through 2 rounds here. I'll go ahead and start putting up some questions that have been asked in the chat. First one comes to us from Mr. Austin Smith. What is Kyle McCord's ADP? And what is your outlook on him, knowing that Ohio State has been such a good system play for QBs recently? But what happens if Ohio State tries to lean more on the running backs? I'll look up his ADP real quick. Willie, I'll throw it over to you first. What do you think about Kyle McCord? Is he what we've seen with CJ Stroud last year, or do you think he's more limited than him?
No, I would think that he's more limited only because of how young he is. And the reason why he's probably going to slide a little bit further is for that reason. You just don't know. Yes, he has the wonderful weapons, but he still has to prove himself. I mean, you just can't take a guy that high, to me, in the first 2 rounds for sure. We'll have to see what your ADP is, but I mean, 3rd, 4th, 5th round to me. If you want to take a chance and you love Ohio State like that, or you're confident in that, then go for it.
Yeah, his ADP currently is at the beginning of the 8th round. He is usually the 17th quarterback off the board.
Yeah, and we've got him as a collective as QB 24. So, I guess if you're in a 2-quarterback league, we've kind of got him at the bottom end of, the starter-worthy guys. We like to use that term. So, he's starter-worthy, but he's kind of at the tail end of that, where if you can get him as a quarterback 3, that's where we'd prefer to have him until he proves, what he's really capable of.
Yeah, I think looking at my rankings, I have him at, let's see. I have him right at his ADP. I have him as my QB 17. I think he's going to be just fine. Do I think he might be a little bit more limited than Stroud? Possibly. I mean, he did sit behind him for a couple years, but I also think the people who think that he's going to become like a 20-point per game kind of guy, that doesn't make any sense to me given the number of touchdowns that Ohio State's going to score this upcoming year. Like, he's going to throw on average for 3-4 touchdowns every single game, unless they just completely take the ball out of his hands, in which case we don't value the Ohio State running backs nearly enough, but I don't think that's going to happen.
Right.
All right.
Yeah.
Willie B., talk about your Elijah Badger pick here real quick, and then we'll move on to the next question.
I kind of went a little bit off here. Clark not being available for UTSA for the start of the season, that potential. I just couldn't take him there. Elijah, he's that guy. He's gonna get you in that 20-25 range a game. Mm-hmm. So why not? Why not take him? He's right now he's healthy. So I just decided to go there instead.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about Badger just because Dillingham has had a propensity to spread the ball around quite a bit wherever he has gone. But again, nothing wrong with taking a shot on a guy that, proved to be he could be an alpha for Arizona State last year. They're going to need help. Their defense is atrocious. They're going to pass the ball a ton. So who are they going to throw it to? Probably the best receiver on the team, more than likely. I just personally, if I was drafting, I probably would have gone the direction that Justin Nottingham went there and took a shot on Jamari Thrash over there at Louisville, who it sounds like is separating himself over there. And we love Jeff Brom's wide receiver ones over there.
That was, for the record, that was one of our January early mock draft picks was Jamari Thrash.
Yes, sir. And I'm coming around. I came around on that one. So good call on that one. All right, J Mill, you make your pick here, man.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Willie.
Yeah, I will ask you, what are your thoughts on Worthy? I remember him last year. What was he going on average? 1.5?
Well, he was a first rounder, early second rounder.
Okay, so with those kind of things in mind, that's why we talked about that ADP. That's why I go against that. That's why I still go with my feeling.
Okay, so to be fair to Worthy, though, and I see people moving up in the chat and everything. We'll get to those questions, y'all, I promise. But we're having good discussion here, so patience, please. With Worthy, he got targeted deep a boatload of times last year, and just they couldn't connect. He got targeted like 40-something times, 20 yards plus down the field, and he caught 8 of them. He connects on like half of those passes. He absolutely would have been worth that first-round pick. It just wasn't happening for some reason with him there. I think he and Ewers do better this year, and we'll see the Worthy this year that I think we wanted to see last year right there. J Mill, you're back on the clock here. You took Audric Estime. I love Audric Estime. I think his ADP is getting a little too high, like coming up in there in the third round. But like that's not just you. That's other people as well. His ADP has been creeping up higher and higher. A lot of that has to do with Logan Diggs getting out of there as well. I'll give you your chance to talk about Estime, and then you can also talk about Neighbors real quick, J Mill.
Wow, you saw that Neighbors pick quick. Yeah, we've got Estime as running back 11 overall. Hartman is, a great new asset at Notre Dame, but, we're not convinced they're all in on the pass game. So, with Estime kind of being the lone guy there in the backfield that should get really the bulk of the carries, the volume pig, as they say, I'm all for that. I don't really see anybody, stealing any carries from him, put it that way. So if he's a 20 carry guy at Notre Dame, I'm happy taking him here. Neighbors, is a bit of a projection. We're all kind of thinking he jumps way up. I believe actually I just took back-to-back kind of running back 11 and wide receiver 11 as far as our list goes. So I'm really happy there. I think Daniels is kind of being slept on as a really good quarterback at LSU. Neighbors is going to be the guy he gets the ball to. So I'm really happy with both of these last picks.
All righty. So, Willie, it's coming up to you here for your 4th round pick here. I don't want to say who you have your eye on because I'm sure RJ's listening right now, waiting to snipe you. But like, what are you looking for here? You got a quarterback, you got a running back, you got a wide receiver. You're pretty balanced so far in terms of your approach. Is there a position that you're kind of feeling the squeeze on? Like, I need to start targeting this position, otherwise it's going to dry up.
No, absolutely not. I just feel like there's always too much talent. So I'm really just gonna stick to my board. The same 2 guys that I was targeting are still here. I see Worthy actually just went, but I'm just gonna stick to the board, not really targeting a position at this point.
Okay, fair enough. You took Mr. Evans there. I think it's a pretty good pick there. Go ahead and hit on Cody's question here. Try to hit through some of these questions before it makes it back to Willie B here. Cody asks, why is Chandler Morris so low on draft boards considering he beat out Duggan last year for the job and Duggan ended up in New York for the Heisman? So I'll start with this one. I think it is a valid question. I have started to say that Chandler Morris has started to become one of my favorite quarterbacks to target, like as my 4th or 5th quarterback off the board because of where he has been going. For those exact reasons, Cody. Again, the system's great with Sonny Dykes. He's produced CFF wide receivers for years. He can run. It's not like he's a statue back there, and it's not like it's a completely different game than Duggan's. I think the big thing that holds people back is that the last time we saw Chandler Morris, he looked like an absolute flaming pile of doo-doo against Colorado. Before he was benched, injured, Duggan goes out there, plays much better than him. I think he'll be better this year. And again, I think it also just speaks to the depth of the quarterback position for CFF this year. Again, we have our elite guys that go off in like the first, second round. But then like the next 30 guys, there are a ton of options that you can take for really, really good upside, in my opinion. A ton
of guys that are proven. A ton of guys that have proven themselves.
I agree.
One other thing I'd add to that, Jared, is I think last year a few of us were really high on whoever the TCU quarterback was going to be, thinking that they would be a really pass-heavy team. But I think they ran the ball 60% of the time, and I don't know if that's going to change or not. So I think just because of the volume that he might not get is one reason that Morris is probably a little lower than he might expect.
No, I think it's a very valid point. Willie, you got anything to add to it before it makes it back to your pick here?
Actually, I agree. I agree with everything you guys have just said there. I'm kind of up against it here, so
sounds good. I'll leave you to think. I'll answer Benjamin's question here because he directed it directly at me. He says, "Hey Jared, are you in on the Ladd McConkey hype?" I adore Ladd McConkey because he is a Georgia Bulldog and I think he is a good football player. Do I think he is a CFF asset? No, maybe best ball at best. If you're going to, again, based on the reports I've heard at a camp, if you're going to target a wide receiver for Georgia, it's got to be Dominic Lovett. And you don't target him until later. Because, again, a lot of it's based on hype and rumor right now. Ladd McConkey as a NFL wide receiver, I do think he'll be a legit NFL wide receiver. I just don't know if he'll be like, your alpha fantasy darling wide receiver. I think he'll end up on a roster somewhere. I think he'll be at worst in the 2 deep somewhere. He probably ends up being a starter somewhere. So that's my thoughts on Ladd McConkey. I love him to death. I think he's a good football player. I just particularly wouldn't. I'm not where Felix is in that he's potentially the best wide receiver in the country. I am not there. Not there at all.
Who's Felix say is the best?
Ladd McConkey out of Georgia.
I hadn't seen that from him.
It's on the Campus Ken YouTube channel. Go. He breaks it down pretty well. Like he does a good job. But like as a Georgia fan, even I'm not there. Willie B, you took Dylan Gabriel. We were talking about him earlier. So is there a Farouk pick here in the near future, Willie?
I wouldn't say that, but I did want to make sure that I am on this front end of this next quarterback run. So I always want to be in the front, then at the tail end of it. So I feel that's going to come. So I just wanted to be at the front end of that.
By the way, you guys are getting some praise in the chats from RJ and Ralph, who are both saying that your content on Twitter is absolutely awesome. So
no, appreciate it.
Y'all should feel really, really good about yourself there.
Thank you.
And Cody makes a good point going back to our Ohio State discussion. If we think that Marvin and Egbuka are both first-round picks in CFF, we gotta feel good about Kyle McCord. Otherwise, we're drafting those guys way too high.
Well, I'll put it this way. We like I said, we've got him at QB 24, which is a starting quarterback in 2 quarterback leagues. And if you think about the fact that Stroud had those guys on the team last year and finished QB 29, okay, so we've got him higher than Stroud finished last year.
I have.
Well, we're a points per game guy. I know you're total points.
I would say I'm total points. And I have Stroud at QB. What is it? 13.
Yeah. And points per game, he was 29 last.
17.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Do you guys count the bowl games as well?
No. Actually,
okay, cool.
That's an interesting point. We
good men.
Yeah, on our average point per game, we only include the 12-game regular season because the other games didn't help anybody.
I agree. I'm fully on board with you guys there.
Yeah. Any point per game you see from us in print on any of our graphics is the 12-game season average.
Makes sense. All right, J Mill, you are on the clock here. Let me see if I can squeeze in. Actually, got a really good question here from Austin. That's a pretty philosophical one. So, J Mill, I'll let you make your pick, and then I'll have you guys break this
Zach
one.
just made. Zach. I think Nate Knoll hasn't been talked about enough. By the way, I think he's there alone for a change, and I think that's a guy who's kind of gone off the radar. This is probably earlier than we've seen him. Could you tell us where Knoll's been going, Jared?
He's going way later than this. I can tell you that much. I personally disagree. I like Knoll. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, Knoll goes as the RB 63 in ADP, which puts him in the 15th round typically. I think he is I like him in that range. This high, I don't really like him. Again, he is Zach's third running back, so I'm not going to knock him too much there. But at the same time, like, I don't think he's alone there. I like Nate Noel, but like, you got Amani Marshall there. You got Kanye Roberts there, two guys that I like. They just brought in Mikael Haywood over from Navy, who has been getting a lot of praise this offseason. I think, and given the fact that Noel is not really a big dude, he's not built to carry the workload like we've seen some guys at App State the last couple of years. So I'm a little weary about taking Noel that highly right there. But again, not going to knock people too much. You go get your guys. That's what makes CFF fun. CFF fun here. J-Mill, you're back on the clock. You took one of my favorite guys, Caleb Hood. I'm not going to knock you for that one at all.
Yeah, you're not even in the draft, but I felt like I just needed him because he was my best available wide receiver. I didn't necessarily worry about getting the next running back that's here that I probably will take. So let's get him out of the way. This is a guy maybe you can't argue that has no competition at running back.
Oh no, I like Ramon Brown, but like it's not pretty otherwise.
Right. So yeah, I'm Himby was another guy we took in January. We spotted early on that he's you want the clear guy who, whether it's clear quarterback one, wide receiver one, running back one. Himby is probably as clear as you can get as far as a running back who's going to be RB1 status. I think he's got some receiving ability also. So I'm happy to get both of those last two guys with Hood and Himby.
All right, this is a fun question from Austin Smith here, a little philosophical for you guys. How much do you consider returning offensive linemen in a system for players' upside/ranking tiebreakers? And does it play for a larger part for running backs than quarterbacks? Who wants to take that one on? Well, I know you're on the clock here soon, so you might want to focus. But J-Mill, you want to take that one first?
Well, I've pointed out in the past, like it's a great stat in terms of looking at starts by the offensive line in terms of a team's winning percentage. I think Phil Steele pointed that out a couple of years ago, that there's a great correlation between the number of total offensive line starts and a winning percentage. We look at it, I think, when we start to dig deeper into, a guy and if he should be ahead of another guy, or if you're looking for, some of the, off the radar guys. I've pointed out the fact this year that, I think Card at Purdue is going to be better than people think. And, one reason is I think he's got a line that I looked at that's experienced, that should be able to protect him. So I think it's maybe a third or fourth factor. Maybe we should look at it more, but it's one of the more difficult things to kind of dig into. And with 133 teams, it's a great stat that I think we should look at more. But honestly, it's kind of a tiebreaker thing that we'll look at, or if we're looking at a reason to validate a running back or quarterback status, we might dig into that a little bit to just double check whether or not we think there's a valid reason they should be higher than other people think they are.
It's one of those things, at least in my opinion, where it's hard to project how it's going to affect a team preseason, because you can, take Clemson, for example. Clemson's returning 4 out of their 5 offensive linemen, but their line was atrocious last year. Same thing with San Jose State. They're returning all 5 offensive linemen, but San Jose State was one of the worst lines in the country last year when it came to giving up sacks. So how important is that?
Right.
If we see a team completely falters down the line, we look back and say, well, yeah, they had 5 new offensive line starters. That probably played a huge part in it. But at the same time, like, I agree with you. It's more along the lines of, like, I already like this guy, and if they have the same offensive lineman that they had last year that made them productive or allowed them to succeed, it just gives me more confirmation as to why I like that certain player. Willie, do you got any thoughts on this?
I've kind of been out of it, but I mean, I kind of agree with that, but I think it's more important to a younger quarterbacks for sure.
Fair point.
So let's say I know we keep hyping up Cord, but let's take that. So if he had one returning lineman, would we be as high as him, even with the 2 studs he has at wide receiver? That puts a lot of pressure on a young kid. So it's a little bit different than say, we have a 4-year starter and losing a bunch of linemen. He kind of knows how to work his way around the offense more than a young guy would. So if it was a younger guy, I'd probably steer a little clear based on the lineman.
Hey, Ralph.
I do look at it.
No, I think it is fair. In our CFF guide, we do mark down which offensive linemen are returning from last year. And it also is important to know, like, is the blindside tackle returning? Because that is very important. Because if you put a new guy in there, doesn't know what he's doing, your quarterback's going to get sacked a whole bunch more. And unfortunately, those sack yardages count in college fantasy. Ralph, you had a really good question about strength of schedule in the chat, but you retracted the message. I would really like it if you put it back in there, because I think that's another fun philosophical one to discuss, and I promise we'll get to it, Ralph. Let's see, what else here? We got a little bit of a break here, so I'll just remind, we got a lot of viewers tonight, which is awesome. Thank you, guys. We got a very lively chat, which is really, really good here as well. Go ahead and hit a like button right down there. Right, I think if I'm pointing, it's there, right there. I think it's right about there. Regardless, see the thumbs up button, hit that like button. It really helps us out. And what really also helps us out is if you're new here or you're just hanging out and you want your college football buddies to come hang out, ask us questions, we can do that. Again, we're mostly college fantasy over here oriented, but we love answering questions just about college football in general because we're all college football nuts. We wouldn't be doing this if we weren't. We love talking about all these different teams. So absolutely bring in your friends. We love to see it. All right. I think we got enough time here to add in another question. This one comes to us from Anthony Perry. Anthony asks, thoughts on C.J. Donaldson and what should be a run-first offense with one of the better offensive lines in front of him? West Virginia is kind of a hard team to figure out, in my opinion, because I expect them to be bad. I really do. Neil Brown is on a hot seat like no other coach in the country is. With him calling plays this year, you're hoping that means a super run-heavy offense right there. But Anthony, if you're still listening, I would highly recommend you go and listen to the podcast we put out on Chasing the Natty in our running backs crash course. Because Austin Nace, who I had on to guess, did a really good job kind of breaking down some of the reasons why C.J. Donaldson isn't as great as we were anticipating. And one of the things I highlighted was, again, we love C.J. Donaldson, but a lot of that came from the fact that we cheat coded with him last year. If you take his points that he had through week 9, he was like RB 60 up until that point. So it was like his numbers were great for a tight end, obviously, but for a running back, not as glorious as we were kind of making it out to be. Now, granted, again, true freshman. You're RB 60 as a true freshman. You're going through a really, really good freshman season. But at the same time, if he repeats that, we're not going to really love where we're taking him right now. But again, obviously very talented. Came in there. Wally pipped Tony Mathis as quickly as possible. So clearly there's some talent there. Hopefully West Virginia is good enough to really take advantage of that. You guys got any thoughts on that real quick? And then Willie B, we'll get to your Zachary Franklin pick here.
No, I agree. I have CJ in our home dynasty league. They kept taking him out. There's times when he could get on a roll, and then you wouldn't see him for 2 or 3 series. So, and I don't know if there was conditioning or if he was just because he was a freshman or what, but those really hurt his numbers. And then, of course, when you got injured, that hurt too.
Willie B, let's talk about your Zachary Franklin pick here. I have been very vocal about the fact that I think Franklin lost almost all of his value with this transfer to Ole Miss. Charlie Weiss's history with a wide receiver one has not been great. In the past 4 years, he has not had a 1,000-yard wide receiver. He likes to spread the ball around quite a bit. Ole Miss has other options there between Louisiana Tech transfer, Trey Harris, Jordan Watkins in the slot there. I mean, you got two incredible tight ends in Michael Trigg and Caden Prescorn. Quinshon Judkins is a great pass catcher right there. I just don't see a path for Franklin living up to what we would want out of, like, you got him as your wide receiver 3 here. I just don't see how he finishes as a top 36 wide receiver in the CFF, given his track record and the fact that, again, we've seen it already. These G5 to P5 upgrades have not, like, transfer upgrades have not particularly worked out as well as we want to. Pretty much the only exception to that was Jacob Cowing, and that's because he played in the Pac-12 where defense is already optional. What do you say to that, Willie?
Well, I mean, like I said, it only takes one guy. But when you throw Trigg in there, then I have to throw a wrench into everything. So to me, Trigg's he's not a factor. I agree with some of that, but still, he has a track record. Let's give the kid. I was thinking about taking him last round, but I changed my mind and took McCoy there. He's still sitting there, so I'm going to take him if he was still sitting there, which I did.
Mm-hmm. I'll ask you about McCoy as well, because we didn't get to talk about him as well. Second Tennessee wide receiver off the board here today. I would argue that McCoy's skill set strikes me as he will not be that Jalen Hyatt type wide receiver for Tennessee. He's just not a speedster. He's big. He's a great target for like 15 yards down the field, but he's never going to really be the guy that they say, hey, Brew, go straight. And then they chuck it 50 yards down the field to him, which is really the guy that you want in the Tennessee offense, who, in my opinion, fits Squirrel White or even Dante Thornton better than Brew. What do you see in Brew McCoy that makes you willing to take him as your second wide receiver there, Willie?
Size. So it's more of, okay, what are we going to do inside the 20, inside the 10?
Fair point.
That's going to be the guy. That's going to be the guy. So that's the reason.
Yeah, no, fair. I think that's a very valid point right there. J-Mel, you just took John Rice Plumlee as your first quarterback off the board here. In redraft, I would be looking at you sideways, but in best ball, I think that was a pretty good pick right there. You're back on the clock. Yeah. What are you looking at?
I'm considering back-to-back quarterbacks here, but I'm going to take a quick look because, like yourself, I mean, when I missed out on kind of the first 4 or 5, I realized, there is an opportunity to wait a while. I think I'm going to go. I'm going to wait to get QB2. I'm going to go with Richard Reese. I think there was a little bit of question early on if the Oklahoma State back, Dominic, what's his name, coming in, if he was going to share carries a little more. But it seems like he had really positive spring reports. He was one of our true freshman All-American last year. I think second only to Judkins in terms of points per game. So I think Reese is only going to get better. I'm not worried about the running back by committee there after what I read during the spring reports. So really, really happy to get Reese here. And with Plumlee, he led all running backs in rushing yards last year. He's got 1,000 yards rushing in his history. I really don't think you can go wrong with Plumlee, especially when I'm getting him in the 7th round.
Are you worried at all about Reese's size? That was kind of one of the big things that kind of hindered him last year, was that he was only 175 pounds last year. I think he's added some weight since then, but they gave him 2 30-plus carry games in a row, and he got so banged up that they couldn't really do much with him the next several games. So are you worried about that happening again? Or do you think it kind of evens out to where he doesn't get the 30 carries, but maybe he gets the 20 carries a game?
Yeah, it's funny. Yeah, that's just never been something I've looked too much at. I know it's something I know we kind of got feedback from you with our Tyler pick in January, going to Minnesota, being a small guy. You had mentioned that about somebody earlier. It's something that in the college game, I don't look too much at the size. With Barry Sanders being 5'9" and 200 pounds, doing what he did, I learned a long time ago. You could be small in college and still get away with some things that you probably can't get away with in the NFL. So, I'm okay with the size. I'm not too worried about that. And he's only going to get bigger and stronger, like you mentioned. So, I'll take him.
Willie, you're on the clock, but do you have anything to add there?
No, it's a 1 year older. Like I say, getting in the weight room, I hope he did. That 14 touchdowns is nothing to sneeze at. So
I agree.
So he's only going to get a little bit stronger. So I don't see that being an issue.
All righty. Well, Willie, you got 15 seconds here. Who are you going to go with your pick here?
I'm going to go Hartman here. I know I'm going quarterback heavy, but I want to have 2 per week. And I feel like with the 3 I have here, we shouldn't have that problem. And it puts these other guys in front of me here in a bind to get their second if they haven't already. They may have to go back and look, but
fair enough. Sorry, I kept thinking that you were finished. My bad. Keep going.
No, you could. No, go ahead.
Hartman, again, probably a little higher than normally goes, but here's the thing about Hartman. I think there is value with Hartman. I don't see him as a guy that's going to get you 30 points per week, but he's a solid 20 to 24 points per week. And that there is some value in that, especially in best ball, where, you can get a guy. I mean, you got 2 pretty good guys ahead of him, but if you took guys like Jaden Daniels or John Rice Plumlee, where they have some weeks where they just absolutely bottom out, it helps to have a guy like Sam Hartman just ready to be there and just get you a guaranteed 20, 24 points. I kind of like that build right there. So good job there, Willie. I needed to compliment you because I feel like I was hard on your last couple picks.
Oh, no. Hey, I don't sweat it. That's the great thing about fantasy.
Oh yeah.
Everybody builds their team differently. And so sometimes you're a success, sometimes you fail. But at least you try, and then you learn from those mistakes.
Yes, sir. All right, we'll throw in a couple. Go ahead, Jeremy.
He's always been against the grain. Willie does not listen to the outside noise. I can tell you that.
Hey, there is value in that. Brett Ponyi asks, quick question: should I be higher on Troy Franklin? Jeremy, I'll throw this one over to you real quick.
Well, I don't know where he has him. That's the problem.
Right. That was my
fair
question.
point. Fair point.
Yeah. Let's see. So, we've got him in the top 20. So if you don't have him in the top 20, you should probably be higher on him. 71 catches, your quarterback's back. You don't have a lot of pressure behind you at wide receiver 2 and 3. Actually, I'm looking at Zakari's number as far as the ranking there.
I would say Will Stein.
Yeah. I apologize for where we thought he was at. So he was 54 last year. So everything else I said makes sense. He's to me the clear wide receiver 1 though. Great yards per catch. He's getting the yardage. We've moved him into the wide receiver 21 spot. So, okay, maybe if you have him outside the top 20, you're okay, but don't put him too far out of that. I think he's definitely a starting wide receiver for, fantasy teams. He shouldn't be worse than your wide receiver 3 if you've got him outside the top 36.
I think he's absolutely going to load up this year. Will Stein has shown that he finds 3 wide receivers that he is very comfortable with. Franklin is planning on going to the NFL after this year. No way they don't give him his time to shine this year. I'm fully in on Franklin. I think he'll be absolutely fantastic. Willie, you just took Mr. Nakia Watson there, running back out of Washington State. Given Ben Arbuckle is running that system, and we saw that he didn't really utilize the running back at Western Kentucky, are you worried about a step back for Nakia Watson given that system? Or do you think that Arbuckle is going to kind of shift his approach in order to work with the talent that he has?
I'll say he works with the talent that he has. I don't see his rushing numbers go up. I mean, he had 730-ish last year, if I'm not mistaken. But we know he can catch.
Yes, sir.
So I see those numbers. I see those numbers improving. So if he improves on that 29, go to 40, maybe even 50, that would be wonderful. But
I agree.
Why not? Why not at this point?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very valid point with Nakia. It's a pass-heavy system, but when you have a running back that you can catch out of the backfield, you got Cam Ward, who already has problems, who already has problems kind of chucking it deep. If he doesn't like the deep option, he can just dump it off to Nakia Watson
exactly
5-6 times a game. That would be absolutely incredible. All right, let's see. More questions in the chat. You guys are doing a great job with the questions tonight. Keep it up, y'all. We're trying to make our way down there as we go. Another philosophical question here from Austin. When a team loses a stud running back and more than likely is moving to running back by committee, do you think that opens up more opportunities for the quarterback? I think he means particularly in the rushing game. For example, he gives Tulane. So they lose Tajay Spears. You got Michael Pratt there, who is obviously a dual threat quarterback in and of himself. Does that kind of bump things up for you guys? What do you think?
To me, I think it still falls back on what we were talking about before, his offensive line.
Fair enough.
So if his offensive line can hold up and give him a lane, then of course he's gonna maybe take off or sit in there a couple seconds and try to deal with that pressure. So to me, it's really still going to come back to the offensive line again. So as far as we're talking about Pratt, I would say it might help a guy like that.
No, I think that's absolutely fair. It's kind of like I kind of have a similar philosophy whenever I see a team that hasn't typically had a wide receiver one in the past, like a clear number one. Once that guy leaves, I start looking at some of the other options, but I also specifically start looking at the tight end, especially if they do have a pretty good tight end. I usually think that kind of opens things up there. For an example, Arizona, I think is a good example this year. They lose Dorian Singer. They're moving, it sounds like they're moving Jacob Cowling to the outside somewhat. That's going to open up some targets over the middle there for Tanner McLaughlin. I think that could be a pretty good example right there. J Mill, you just took Mr. Ashton Hawkins there out of Texas State. Right. Obviously, we got GJ Kenny coming over there. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think prior to his injury last year, he had a couple 20-point games in two of his last three, I think, or his last two before he got hurt. The sky's the limit. Yeah, he was getting 9 targets a game last year. The team might pass even more this year. So I'm really high on him. He's for us, definitely like a top 30 guy. So to get him down here around the 9th round, I'm really happy. I took him over, the guys that I was considering at my second quarterback. So he better produce.
Yeah, fair enough. Real quick question here. Both of you give me one name with this question. Cody asks, Dairy Raid at Wisconsin with Phil Longo. Where is the fantasy gold?
The fantasy gold in Wisconsin?
Ooh. We're going to say no Braylon Allen. That's a little bit too easy.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, we just wrote about DK. I mean, I think DK is the guy. How high should you take him? He's let's see. He's our wide receiver 44, so I don't know necessarily if you've even got a guy you'd want to start in your fantasy lineup right now, but maybe he's a flex guy, becomes a bona fide starter by midseason. But DK seems to be the guy that should emerge if they throw the ball more. We talked about the fact that they ran.
No, you got 10 seconds, by the way.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I'll grab one of those quarterbacks maybe that I was talking about.
3 seconds.
There we go.
Right on.
There we go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Got it in.
Yeah. Thanks for reminding me. But yeah, I think the shift there from 60% running last year is what we really think is going to help DK and the wide receivers in general at Wisconsin.
Willie, you got a name there besides DK, or are you on the DK train as well?
If we're saying, would you say Allen's off the table? No, that's it. I mean, I'm like I said, I mean, you have to prove that you're going to change. And I understand the philosophy and everything, but sometimes things take time. So, and in fantasy, we don't have a lot of time. So those two names, and I really don't have a third.
All righty. And obviously I'm in on Allen. Tanner Mordecai is kind of going late enough in a lot of these drafts that I'm kind of okay with taking shots on him. Obviously the spring game performance wasn't great. I'm kind of interested to see if Braden Locke takes over at one point, because the word with him is that he looks really good over there. So we'll definitely see.
Mordecai is interesting, though. I mean, you look at kind of if he was at SMU, we'd be sitting there talking about him as a top 20 quarterback. Now we're not quite sure if he's top 40, but we know he's capable. It's just, we don't know exactly what that split's going to be in terms of how much they pass, I think.
I mean, it's also a huge difference between AAC defenses and Big Ten defenses. That's a big jump in terms of the talent that you're facing.
Right. But you're looking at last year's QB 20 in points per game, who, people are questioning, should they take him in the top 40 right now?
All right, Willie B, you just took your first tight end off the board there with Brady Hunt. Are you happy with the tight end that you're able to get here in the 10th round versus some of the people going up to get like a Keithy or a Sanders there in the 7th and 8th round? Are you happy with Brady Hunt here in the 10th round?
Absolutely. I have a few stocks in him, and then I'm looking at the guys behind him. I feel like, okay, now I can just get the tight end out of the way. I'm not going to worry about it for a while. Got a lot of late sleepers, so now I can get back and we do running back, wide receiver for quite a while here.
All right, Willie, I'm going to ask a question from the chat here. Ralph P asks, how do you use strength of schedule differently for each position? Do you use it at all when it comes to projecting these guys?
Only when I'm dealing with MAC action, really. That's when I'm really looking at that schedule. The top end guys, especially your studs, when you're drafting in the first 3-4 rounds, those guys better produce no matter who they're playing against. So it's really those those Tuesday, Wednesday games. I'm always looking at the schedule. So that's when I'm really targeting certain teams, certain players. And toward the end of the season, obviously, you got to be looking at those matchups, but your team's already built at that point. But going into the draft, no. Only when I'm dealing with the lower, the G5s is when I'm going to look at their schedule.
Yeah, in our CFF guide, we have a whole section dedicated to the teams with some playoff troubles in those weeks, like Florida, USC, especially with a bye week in week 13. Michigan's got a pretty tough road there in the last 3 weeks. TCU, Tennessee's got Georgia in the round 1 of the playoffs. It's a pretty rough stretch for some of these teams in that range. So I do think that's something somewhat to consider. But like you said, you should have built your team up by that point to be able to withstand some of those things. If you can't live without a certain player on your fantasy team, you never deserve to have them in the first place.
Right. Yeah, and I think that's where you kind of look at it almost by conference, and specifically, like, you don't want maybe a lot of Vanderbilt players in the SEC once you get into SEC play, or you don't necessarily want a ton of Duke players in the ACC. Riley Leonard might be the exception, but but you do want a lot of MAC players when they're playing against each other, like Willie said. So, but to that, it's specifically the weak teams in the strong conferences you may want to avoid some players from.
No, absolutely. RJ, you made a comment about the player you're about to draft wouldn't have survived this long if I had a squad. Well, I see 3 players in a row that you took there, RJ. Jalen Daniels, Caleb Johnson, and Shavon Cordero, all 3 of which probably would not have lasted that long. So I'm not sure which one you're talking about. You're just drafting a team that I would like to have drafted, RJ. So that's my roundabout way of complimenting your team there.
Yeah, this is exactly where you've been taking Cordero, isn't it, Jared?
Cordero, Daniels, and Caleb Johnson, all three of those. That's right about where I've been taking them. And Rodney Hammond there in the fourth. Like, I think RJ just went back and looked at what some of my drafts in the past and said, like, well, if Jared's not going to draft a team, I might as well draft for him.
Yeah, and that was after his lucky start to get Harrison at 6th.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
All right. Who do we think will have a better year? This is a question from Austin Wood in the chat. Who do we think will have a better year? Jace McClellan or Damian Martinez? My rankings say Damian Martinez, but man, I am starting to really buy into Jace McClellan this year, y'all.
Yep.
Alabama's going to run the ball a crap ton compared to last year. They only ran 38% on neutral downs. They are going to change that so much this year with the lack of proven passers at quarterback. I mean, none of the three guys they have between Ty Simpson, Jalen Milroe, and Tyler Buckner have been impressive in the passing game. They're going to rely on a guy like Jace McClellan. He's going to have more scoring opportunities. Damian Martinez, I think, will probably have more yardage by the end of the year. My big question with Martinez is that, man, Jonathan Smith loves to divvy up touchdowns. His touchdown upside is going to be capped unless they directly change that philosophy with that offensive system over there. So I'm a little worried about Martinez. I guess that's my answer. Yardage-wise, Martinez will have the better year. Fantasy-wise, I think I'm starting to lean Jace McClellan, even though I think my rankings might say otherwise. I need to update those.
Yeah, that's interesting.
You're up real quick.
You're up, Jeremy.
Yeah, okay, I'm good.
Willie, while he's picking, why don't you answer that question? Martinez or McClellan?
Well, I was going to say, that's a great question. I mean, we have Martinez 20 overall and McClellan's 21st. I agree with you as far as Martinez may end up with the most yardage. That's one of the things that we differed on early was McClellan. And I think we ended up talking that over and moving him up a bit. But I still like Martinez a little bit better.
So Austin Smith, other Austin, kind of piggybacking off of Austin Wood's question, DJU, or really this kind of goes for both situations, which quarterback are you more worried about vulturing touchdowns? Insert Alabama quarterback here or DJU at Oregon State?
That's an interesting point. Well, we don't know who Alabama's quarterback is going to be.
I mean, all three of them can run.
Yeah. I'd say DJU that's something I hadn't really thought too much about. But yeah, I'd say DJU might take away from Martinez's total touchdowns. I think that's the bigger risk, for just talking specifically which quarterback might score more and take touchdowns away. I think that's more clear to me.
All right. While he's picking, Willie, what do you think? Which quarterback are you more worried about vulturing some touchdowns?
I mean, to me, I'm not going to worry about that. But to answer the question, I'll have to. I mean, with both of those guys, you shouldn't be trying to get cute, especially Alabama. You have everything you need to run the football down anyone's throat at any point in time.
Yep.
So I would say, to me, it's going to be DJ, but neither one of those backs should be looked over just to get a quarterback in the end zone. That to me is absurd, and I actually hate it.
No, fair enough. All right, let's see. J Mill, you took Jalen Conyers and Will Shepard here. You were just talking about being a little weary of Vanderbilt players, and here you are drafting a Vanderbilt player. What's going on there, man?
Well, the exception to the rule is you do want a receiver on the worst team in the conference because they're going to be playing from behind and need to pass the ball. So I'm going with Shepard in the SEC. He proved what he could do last year against that competition. I think he's going to at least do better. He can't. I don't think he'll do worse. He's got a quarterback that's coming along right there with him. So I think the young quarterback and the young receiver, develop a little more chemistry. And that is the one exception to what I was saying. If you can get a receiver on the bad team in the conference, that's the guy you want.
What about Jalen Conyers? You took him there. You were ready to talk about him in the last round. You talked about him earlier as a guy that you were going to target here late. I assume you're pretty happy with getting him here in the 11th round.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very happy. I'm trying to see. Maybe he's about the 10th tight end taken so far, something in that range. I've got him at, tight end 5. I don't think I read better reports of any player this spring than Conyers in Arizona State. So I think, I'm buying into. I hope the local guys got it right, because I'm putting a lot of faith into what they said about what kind of improvement he's going to have this year in terms of the superstar status that they've placed on him. So I think to be like the 10th or 11th tight end off the board here, to get him in the 11th round when he was my tight end 5 to begin with, really happy about that.
RJ, great pick. RJ really is doing my draft right now, because like Luka Lachey would not have survived to the 12th round there. So appreciate you, RJ, for grabbing that. I probably wouldn't have gone with Jarquez Hunter, but because I'm avoiding that Auburn backfield altogether for the most part. Willie, first of all, I love watching you draft, Willie, because like I can see the gears turning in your head. You are so like into it. I love it. I want to read off a couple of comments here I've seen in the chat regarding McClellan or Damien Martinez. Seems to have spawned a good chat here. Perry says, I like Martinez for the fact that he doesn't trust Alabama to give McClellan enough touches. I mean, Alabama's been pretty good about getting their RB1 touches over the past couple of years. In my opinion, if you're worried about a guy like Justice Haynes coming in there and taking touches away from McClellan, I think, again, I love Haynes for the future. I think his year 1 impact is getting just a little bit inflated, because even a guy like Najee Harris, who was absolutely phenomenal for Bama, only got like 300 yards in his freshman year. Like, it's just a loaded backfield. They're going to give the guy like McClellan, who's been there forever and who can fill every role they need him to do, because McClellan's a pretty good catcher out of the backfield as well. I think McClellan will be just fine. Let's see. Austin Smith says, I'm higher on McClellan than Martinez. He does not trust the Bama QB, and lots of talks of old school Saban bully ball. McClellan drafted, should hope Buckner is QB1. I'm still on the Jalen Milroe is QB1 train, but I might be the only person still there with that. Ralph B asked real quick, if you had to guess who gets the most carries out of Martinez, Trey Benson, or Jaquindon Jackson, who would you guys choose?
Probably Martinez. I mean, he's got Fenwick, is that the guy's name there at Oregon State? He's got the old guy there, but he surpassed him last year. So I don't know that Martinez is going to have really any competition for carries compared to the other guys at Texas. And he said McClellan, right? Benson or McClellan?
Yeah, it's Martinez, Benson, or Jaquindon Jackson.
Or Jaquindon Jackson, yeah. Well, Jaquindon Jackson, I know he's probably one of the biggest risers this offseason, but we're not quite as high. We're not saying he's a bad play, but I mean, he's got Glover and Bernard there that he's got to, you got to worry about him, sharing carries with. So I think Martinez is the most clear-cut running back one out of those 3.
I don't care how many carries Jaquindon Jackson is getting. I don't care if he's only getting 15 to 17 touches per game in that department. I do care that he, at least from what we saw at the end of last year, seems to be getting the important carries, which are the goal line carries for Utah.
True.
So, like, Utah's always had a back that just way outperforms the number of touchdowns that they should get based on their yardage. I think Jaquindon Jackson will be that again this year, and you're going to be more than happy with him, even if he doesn't have the traditional, like, 250 carries that you want to see out of a running back there. So, Willie, you just took Colin Lacey and Kamani Vidal. Talk to us about those 2 guys real quick. What do you like what you see there?
The production. Right now, it's just value from production at this point. who, when my studs are gone, who can come in and fill and do what they're supposed to do. And that's what I'm looking at, is the production.
Alrighty, perfect. We got another question here from Austin Smith. Does Sean Dollars replace Toa at Nevada with his as their RB1, even though he's a smaller back, but he is more electric? So you guys, or like earlier, I was kind of talking about size and everything like that. I'm not usually a big fan of smaller smaller running backs. That's mostly to do in the Power 5. Again, you have your exceptions. You have your Deuce Vaughns and everything like that. Guys are just absolutely electric. But Toa at Nevada, for as crappy as a team as Nevada was last year, Toa finished as the RB30. He's gone. They got nobody else there. Like, there's nothing to be excited about at Nevada except for a little transfer named Sean Dollars, who came over from Oregon. Sean Dollars, here's his average yards per carry the last 3 years that he played at Oregon. As a true freshman, 11.6 yards per carry. Okay, yeah, that's crazy. Like, he's not going to do that again. But 2020, 5.9 yards per carry. 2022, 5.5 yards per carry. Like, dude is an efficient runner. And he was doing that in the Pac-12. Put him in the Mountain West. I do think there is reason to be excited about over there at Nevada. And it also helps that he's a pretty good catcher out of the backfield too. I mean, 2022 last year, 16 catches, 143 yards. Like, I think they kind of had him in that hybrid running back wide receiver role and everything like that. But even still, put a guy that electric at a school like Nevada where there's nobody else, that could be a ton of fun. J Mill, you're on the clock, so I'll throw this to Willie B. What do you think, Willie B?
If he gets used as a bell cow instead of having to split, that's the only problem I had with him. I remember taking him in our home as a freshman. He just never quite reached his potential of what I thought it was going to be. So right now he's on that level of potentially being the best player that could be on the field in certain situations. So it's up to him to put that best foot forward, but you cannot underestimate or doubt his explosiveness. So he has a lot of upside. I wouldn't mind taking him, in this range here coming up if he hadn't already gone. But this is his last stint. I mean, he's got to prove it here.
No, I agree.
Especially if he wants to go to the next level.
I agree 100%. Again, he does not go in this range. He's usually a guy that comes off the board in like the mid-20s, late 20s when it comes to rounds and everything like that. He's definitely a guy that people have shot for upside near the end of drafts. Now that we're talking about him, he's about to jump up about 5 rounds, but that's just how this works.
And hopefully that's by design.
J Mill, you took Michael Matheson there out of Western Kentucky. You feeling good about that pick?
Yeah, real good. I mean, they've proven the last 2 years that, wide receiver 2 is going to eat at WKU. So Matheson becomes the new Davis from last year. Really don't see too much competition, to beat him out as the second best receiver there behind Corley. So, you might as well get wide receiver 2, from the top passing offense in the nation in the 13th round if you can.
All righty, J Mill, you're back on the clock here.
Yep, and I'm gonna take your favorite here.
My favorite. That guy. That guy, huh?
Yeah. I'm gonna stick with the small guys, and in our January mock draft, guide, Sean Tyler. He shared the role with a bigger guy in Western Michigan. We know Western Michigan and the MAC isn't the Big Ten, but again, kind of leaning on some spring reports. The staff seems happy. I've learned not to take him maybe in the 4th or 5th round where we were excited to take him in January, but I think in the 14th round, it's a fair pick. It's worth rolling the dice.
As the resident Sean Tyler hater, I think this is a much better range to take him if you really think that he is going to have the impact that you think he is going to have. I still don't take him in this range, but I totally understand why somebody else would. J-Mill, you're big on him. Prize Picks put out his season rushing yards prop bet out there at 899.5 yards. Would you take the over or under on that?
Oh.
So right at 900 yards.
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think they might have just got it right. He's I'm not doing a lot of money. I'd do a $10 on over on that one.
Alrighty. Willie, you like him too, but would you take over or under on that?
That was a great kick, that last one there.
Jeremiah Hunter?
I'm gonna say,
very fun.
I'm going to say under.
All right, Willie B with the under. I'll take it. All right, Willie B, you're on the clock here. We'll let you pick. Talk about your pick, and then we got 2 questions in the chat from Michael and Austin. We'll get to you guys here in a second. So who you going with, Willie?
Like I say, that was a great pick. That was going to be my pick. So
back to the drawing board.
So I'll go. So going back to what I said as far as not going position wise. So a lot of people, you get sniped. You're just going to go next down to the list. No, I'm going to stick to my board, and that's why we go running back here instead.
All right,
and we'll go back and get the receiver later.
All right, we got a question from Michael here. This is 2 guys that are, I'd say, probably lower down on a lot of our lists and everything, which kind of answers Michael's question here already. He says, hello, love the podcast, which, first of all, thank you, Michael. Glad you have been listening. Does the Virginia Tech starting quarterback Grant Wells or NC State starting running back Jordan Houston hold any value? He says, I rarely see either of them picked up in our drafts. Jeremy, I'll throw this over to you first here, sir. Grant Wells, Jordan Houston, is there any value there?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really see any value in Grant Wells, to be honest. He's really proven to be inconsistent at best. He maybe is like your 6th or 7th quarterback in a best ball, but I definitely wouldn't take him in a redraft. He also throws a lot of interceptions, which can take away points in a lot of leagues. Houston, I mean, he's definitely worth taking, I think, in best balls or in a league where you're afforded the ability to draft like a 5th or 6th running back for depth. He could be the starting running back at North Carolina State. It's just how much will he produce? But in a best ball, Jordan Houston might be a decent 7th or 8th running back for sure.
Are you kind of worried that Robert Arnay, again, pass heavy system?
Yeah,
at Virginia and at Syracuse. The exception really was Sean Tucker, and I think that was just one of the scenarios where, one, he was a really good pass catcher, so that helped him out right there with staying involved in the passing game, but also, too, he was just a really good talent. Do you think Jordan Houston can kind of transcend that like Tucker, or do you think it ends up just hurting him?
Yeah, I don't think he transcends it like Tucker. I think that was kind of a one-off situation, but I just don't see anybody else at North Carolina State that can take anything away from Houston, is what I'm saying. Is
fair point.
They've got to hand the ball off to somebody once in a while. So if he gets 13 to 15 carries a game, he could break out and get you 60 to 100 yards and 1 touchdown every 3rd game, or 2 touchdowns randomly every twice this season. So that's what I'm saying. Really, as a best ball guy or a 5th or 6th running back in your really deep leagues, it's where Houston could fit in.
Willie, you promised us a wide receiver, and you did not give us a wide receiver. You went Jabari Small over there at Tennessee. I am interested. I like Small, but a lot of people are thinking it's a 2-horse race there with him and Wright. Why are you more in on Small over Wright?
I'm gonna just from what I saw last year, Tennessee, it's just gonna be the wild west run and shoot. I mean, everybody's gonna get a piece, but Small, there's just something about that kid. You just can't pass him up. That's the reason why.
No, fair enough.
I think just to help him out a little bit there too is we when we did the write up on him and we had him up probably a little higher than some people at, running back 49 even, which would be a good running back 4. The guy's had 9 touchdowns 2 years ago and 15 touchdowns last year. So regardless of how often he might get the ball, he just seems to have a nose for the end zone.
Did he really get 15 touchdowns? No.
Yeah, 13 and 2 receiving.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't even know that. That's very impressive from Small there.
Yeah, and nine the year before, which is why you might discount the 15 and say, oh, he's definitely going to go backwards. Well, he had 9 the year before, so he's got a nose for the end zone.
By the way, Willie, love that you're drinking out of a mason jar. Just absolutely, I absolutely adore that.
I got to get my water in, so.
Dude, things just taste better when they come out of a mason jar. Like that's the God's honest truth right there. Tommy Harvey, the Tennessee fan in the chat, saying Jalen Wright is the better running back. So,
Okay.
ooh. Anyway, we got an interesting question here from Austin. And he wasn't aware of Whaley's situation here, but I do think it's still worth kind of talking about here. Wyoming running backs. We like them. Wyoming runs the ball a crap ton, and they love to give it to one guy. Harrison Whaley was the guy that a lot of us were kind of really big in, you know what I mean. We were in on him big. He's going to be out the first couple of weeks for the season. How are you guys navigating that situation? Do you think that a guy like DQ McNeely, it's DQ James, Dwayne McNeely, do you think he starts as RB1 game 1 and just doesn't give it up and basically kind of keeps Harrison Whaley on the bench? Or do you think it's one of those situations where, we don't get Whaley the first couple of weeks, but eventually he's going to come back, and once he comes back, he'll be the guy? How are you guys navigating the situation? Willie, we'll start with you.
It just depends. What did we say? What was the injury specifically?
I'll have to look it up here.
And they're probably not even going to disclose that, but they're likely not to rushing back. So I mean, you have to kind of look at it that way. I won't say that a guy like this is just going to lose his job. So I mean, he would have to ball out for Whaley not to get back on the field. And unless it's, if it's a significant injury, then, we probably won't see him if we don't see him by week 6, then we know it, he's probably not going to he's not going to get back on the field, maybe until, what did we say, the week 12. And then by then it's too late. Bowl game's not going to help. So.
According to Craig Bowl, the head coach, he had some knee reconstruction surgery.
Yeah. So, to me, I don't foresee him. I don't see it just being 3 games. I hope I'm wrong, but I just don't see it being 3 games if it's reconstruction.
That description scares me.
Right. Reconstruction doesn't equal 3 games.
Well, again, apparently he had the reconstruction earlier this offseason. They're just now disclosing it to the media.
Right. But I guess that's true. It depends on how early. Yeah, I mean, a lot of us were high on him, but I think 3 weeks does sound, even if he had that in February, that's a stretch if it was a major surgery. Unfortunately in the college, we just don't know the details of how serious the injuries were.
No, I agree 100%.
But I can say this: I don't know anything about the other 2 guys, so it's going to make me want to look them up now.
Yeah, I would say Dwayne McNeely is the guy I've started kind of taking a couple shots on in drafts. DQ James is probably another guy to look at as well. But he kind of came in after several guys ahead of him got injured, so we'll see. Right. J-Mill, let's talk about your last 2 picks here. You got Javonte Barnes and Jack Plummer. Yeah. I mean, Gavin Sawchuk got taken 1 pick after you when you took Barnes there. Were you kind of hoping to be able to get both of those guys, or are you just really all in on Barnes?
Yeah, no, I wasn't going to handcuff. And at this point, I'm not drafting anybody necessarily to be all in, here in the middle of the draft. But Barnes, I'm a Barnes lean in terms of the guy that could produce the gray type numbers. It's a little bit of a coin toss. I know our guy, Sooner CFF thinks Sawchuck's the guy, but Barnes seems to be the favorite by a little bit. So I'm just putting my chips on him for right now, because I feel like whoever ends up being running back one at Oklahoma, could still be beneficial for this point of the draft. And I think he's my 5th or 6th running back. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'll take a chance that Barnes might have 3 20-point games at this point.
What about Jack Plummer? You just took him as your 3rd quarterback there in the 16th round. How you feeling about that?
Yeah, Jack Plummer I love. I know he didn't produce a ton at Purdue, but I'm more of a Brome believer than anything. I just love what the guy's done for offenses. I know it's kind of shown itself more in the wide receiver position, but I just think with the volume he gives his quarterbacks, again in a best ball, I'll take Plummer. He might have 2 500-yard games for all I know.
Fair point. Willie, my good sir, you took one of my favorite tight ends to take later in drafts, and quite frankly, you're taking him where I think he should be going. He goes later a lot of times, but perfect value there in my opinion. Mason Fairchild, tight end out of Kansas, finishes the tight end 13 last year in total points there. He is your 2nd tight end off the board. What can you tell us about Fairchild that makes you want to draft him?
I'm looking at the value in the receiver at this point, and especially with everyone going second tight end, the value was just too good to pass up, because we look at Preescorn, trying to take that step up. Gums wasn't too keen on, so I just thought, based on what the production he's going to get after Neal, I just couldn't pass it up.
No, I agree. Again, I love Fairchild. I think this is a great value here. We're about halfway through the draft, so a couple of comments I will make here real quick. First of all, Austin says, love you, Jared, but it's not a CTN/live draft without me getting tongue-tied at least once. Thanks, Austin. Brett Ponyi there in the chat makes a good point. If you have not liked the video already, guys, we're having a great time over here. I hope you're having a good time as well. If you are having a good time, please take 2 seconds to just go down there, click that like button for free. And heck, while you're down there, you can click that little subscribe button if you haven't already, because we do this once every week up until the start of the season, and we have a great time with it. So make sure you come back for every single one of them here throughout the rest of the offseason here. Gentlemen, we're a little over halfway through the draft. We'll let you talk about your Smoke Harris pick there in a second, Willie, but kind of reflect on the first half of your draft here. Are you happy with what you've been able to get? Are there positions that you feel like you've kind of missed out on? You might need to target a little bit later here. Willie, you just made your pick here, so we'll start with you. How are you feeling about your first 17 rounds? Would you do things any differently?
No, I think I like it pretty good here. There was only, I think, one. I would have liked to have McCammon 3rd, but getting Mockabee right after, I can't complain with that. Losing out Hunter. Hunter was like my last, tier 3-ish kind of guy. So that's why I waited. That's why it ended up being 3 more rounds before I got Smoke.
Fair enough. Jeremy, how are you feeling about your team up until this point, 16 rounds in?
Yeah, I'm feeling pretty solid. The pick that I was literally sniped on with the pick before, I was going to take, since this is the first draft I've taken quarterback so late. Normally I've been fortunate enough to get one of those top 4 or 5 early. I didn't get those guys, so I decided to wait, much later than usual. So I was going to go Plumlee, Armstrong, and then try to get my 3rd kind of there in a bunch with DeLora, who I really, really like and think is undervalued. And he was literally taken the pick before I had to take Shepard. So that threw me off a little bit there. I think I might be a little weak at running back, so we're going to take a few chances there. Probably draft a few more than I normally would in the second half of the draft. just to try to shore up the possibilities of some big games. But I'm really happy with the wide receivers and even happy with the quarterbacks, even with the strategy of waiting until the 7th round to take the first one.
Again, lots of pretty high floor quarterbacks going off in that range. Willie B taking a break real quick, understandable, sir. Austin asks in the chat. Actually, you know what, Jeremy? I'm going to let you make your pick here because it's about to be you on the clock. Here,
Okay.
I'll look through the chat and make sure there's no questions that I have missed here. Again, a couple comments on Jabari Small versus Jalen Wright from Michael. Correctly pointing out that Small has gotten more fantasy points the last couple of years compared to Jalen Wright. So maybe Wright might be better on a down-for-down basis, but you know, we're a fantasy company here, so we're looking at Small who gets the touchdowns.
Yep.
Jeremy, you just took Henry Parrish there out of Miami. That's a pretty loaded backfield for the most part. I mean, you got Henry Parrish there, Trevante Citizen, who's kind of on coming back and not coming back. We'll see. But even still, you got God, what's his name? I just had on tip of my Don Chaney Jr. as well.
Yeah.
They bring in Mark Fletcher, the true freshman running back there.
Right,
they bring in AJ Allen out of Nebraska. Like, they got a lot of dudes there. What makes you think that Parrish can separate himself there and be a valuable asset?
Yeah, they've got a lot, and I like the fact that, you know, he's got a little bit of a track record. It's not spectacular, but I like the fact that 2 other guys left.
Yeah, fair enough.
And he didn't. So they weren't confident enough for some reason. We don't know if it's the other guys like Citizen or the true freshman coming in. I don't think they'd necessarily be scared of a true freshman because they didn't see how the coaches were treating him. But a lot of times when a guy leaves, it's because they feel like another player is getting, you know, some kind of preferential treatment, that sort of thing. You know, Franklin didn't leave. 2 other guys did. So I think Franklin's confident enough to stick around for a reason.
Well, Franklin left to go to UL Monroe, and then Jalen Knighton went to SMU.
I'm sorry. I got my name's back. Parrish didn't leave.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Parrish didn't leave for a reason. The other guys
also,
left
10 seconds.
For a reason.
10 seconds, Jeremy.
Not me. Yep, I got you. I'll take another one of my favorites here.
All right, there you go. You talked about him earlier.
Yeah. This is one of the guys that, you know, I really like the offensive coordinator. You know, you might think because Brome's leaving, Purdue's not going to be passing much, but I think they're going to be passing just as much with the new OC. He's got a solid line. He's another guy who, you know, coaches really publicly don't like to come out. And you hear a lot from the press about who's impressed during the spring, and they call players out. But you don't hear a lot of big-time praise from coaches about a player because, you know, they don't want to stroke their egos too much. But the coaches at Purdue didn't hesitate to single Card out as a player who's performed well early in spring and really become a leader there. So I think Card be a nice surprise.
All righty, Willie, it is about to be your pick here. Again, what are you kind of looking for here, Willie, coming up on your pick here?
It's kind of a no-brainer of what I need. So what's he got? 13 seconds. So now to answer your question, now that he's picked, definitely wide receiver here.
Was Calhoun going to be one of the guys you're looking at there, or?
No. Not that it's a bad pick or anything like that. He just not.
You have your guys.
Not one of my guys I would target.
So who are you going to target here, Willie? Do you got a list of wide receivers you're kind of deciding between right now?
You got a few. I think I'm going to probably be able to get both. So I'm going to go first. We're going to go.
Are you telling me, Willie, that you're playing the ADP game a little bit right now? You're thinking about who's going to make it back to you?
It's more so of guys I like that you guys don't like, and I feel like they can slide a little bit.
That's playing the ADP game, Willie. That's exactly what that is. That's too good.
Round 18, he's playing the ADP game.
Hey, that's where you got to do it sometimes, even though
Yeah,
that's where. But that's also where things get weird when it comes to players coming off the board. So.
Yeah, that's why I took Card. I mean, Card's a guy probably would last till in the 20, around 20 something, 25, 30 even. But I want him. I want him now.
Yeah, and you never know in this range when guys are coming off the board. So I don't blame you there whatsoever.
Yeah.
Speaking of guys who are going a little bit later than they did, okay, there's Sean Dollars in the 18th round. I was curious when he would come off the board there. Yep. But two quarterbacks with upside here from Austin Smith. Who would you rather have as your QB4? Malik Hornsby at Texas State or Emory Jones at Cincinnati? Both of them huge projections, projects. We haven't seen it in either one of those systems. But both of them are dual threat guys. Both of them, you would say, have pretty favorable schedules for the most part to be able to at least put up some points.
Yeah.
Who would you rather have, J-Mill?
I'm taking Hornsby. I think I'm taking the gamble with the new coach from Incarnate Word. Even though he's got the dual threat capability, I think I'm taking the gamble on the quarterback who might throw the ball a lot more, which is probably Hornsby.
All right, fair enough. Willie, which one would you rather have, Hornsby or Emory Jones at Cincinnati?
Ooh, those are some choices there. I'd probably stick with Hornsby as well. Cincinnati, it's having to make that change is too much of a risk. But I mean, if you had to take him that late, why not? But I just can't see it.
All right.
I can't see me taking that chance.
I 100% take that chance. I like Emory Jones there at Cincinnati. I mean, look at what Scott Satterfield was able to do with Malik Cunningham the last couple of years. Like, Malik Cunningham's not a passing quarterback whatsoever. I think with Emory Jones running off Ben Bryant there, I think he's got that job locked down. I think he's in for a much better fantasy year than we're giving him credit for. And quite frankly, in my quarterback crash course episode we did for CTN not too long ago, I named Emory Jones as my guy that you can get outside the top 20 rounds who has the potential to finish as a top 10 quarterback for CFF this year. Because if things go right over there, we see what Malik Cunningham can do in that system. Emory Jones gets into a system where he is comfortable, they let him do his thing. I feel like that he's in for a pretty good year over there, as long as that freshman quarterback there, Drogush, isn't as good as he might potentially be. But sounds like for now, Emory's got that job on lockdown over there. I think it could be a ton of fun over there. But to answer the question from Austin, I'd still rather have Malik Hornsby. Just the upside's way too much for me to ignore. It's the Sun Belt Conference. He's going to out-athlete half the people on the field and then jump over the other half. So, like, if he is the starting quarterback for Texas State, he should be in for a pretty good year, although he could have some very up and down weeks. We will definitely see. Willie, you, sir, took Mr. Tyrese Chambers there. 3 wide receivers in a row between Smoke Harris, Dante Cephas, and Tyrese Chambers. In my opinion, you're deploying the strategy I've seen some people talk about recently where there's some wide receiver ones from systems we don't typically think of as, like, fantasy hubs for wide receiver production that slide down into these later rounds. I think you took 3 of those guys exactly with that description right there. Is that what you were going for there, or was that just happy go lucky chance?
No, I mean, earlier I did the same thing with the running backs, only because I keep bringing up Hunter, but it happened. So I had to go the 3 running backs, grab Fairchild. So now, like I said, when we're looking at the range of when the receivers go, why not take the number 1 guy when you're, most times everybody's looking for the 2 and the 3 based on, okay, what production and the explosive offenses and things like that. Why get the Tennessee 3rd receiver when you can get a number 1?
Yeah, fair point. Fair point indeed. Jeremy, you are on the clock here, sir. What you looking at?
I'm still trying to shore up that running back room and not liking everything I see here, but I think this guy is as good as I can get for this part of the draft, and should be a little bit better team with the new coach. So we'll go with Anthony Grant. He did manage 900 yards last year, so hopefully he can have a couple big games this year.
All righty. Austin Smith's got another question in the chat, but y'all, the chat's kind of dried up a little bit. I see a bunch of y'all watching right now. Do not be afraid to ask questions, y'all. We're in the back half of the draft. We're starting to get a little bit deeper. Start asking about some of these guys coming off the board. Like, if you see a guy that you think like, whoa, he went super high, what's the story there? We can help you fill in some of those gaps, help you realize or kind of understand why people would be high on some of these players. So again, don't feel like, go ahead and drop those questions in the chat. We're having a good time over here. But Austin's question, what is your opinion on drafting for players super high upside who might be a yo-yo? Okay. I need to reread this question again. Basically, Austin is asking, there are certain players that have super high upside, but also super low floor. So think John Rice Plumlee, where his potential any given week is 40 plus fantasy points. But he also puts in some real stinkers. He puts in some 12, 13 point fantasy weeks sometimes. How do you guys navigate doing that? Obviously, we're in a best ball right now where that doesn't matter. Does that affect you guys in regular redraft?
Yeah, I personally, best ball is a totally different ball game. I think the yo-yo guys, as he said it, you're much more willing to take in a best ball because you really kind of want some of those guys, that can have the huge outbursts. But I'm really trying to look for the more consistent player when I'm in a redraft, and I need that person to be my starter every single week.
Oh, Jeremy, you're about to.
Yep.
You got EJ Warner. Yeah, you got EJ Warner. You good with that?
I had a queue set up. Yeah. So.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
he loves Warner, by the way.
Yeah. So look, let's see. That gives me 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm close to the end of my quarterbacks there, but that gets me probably, to where I only need to take one more, maybe two at this point. But I was going to move a wide receiver above him there, but at least I had a queue set up, so he was one of 3 guys in the queue.
Willie, what about you with the high ceiling, low floor weekly players? How do you navigate that in a redraft league?
In a redraft, I think I could go with the high ceiling. Especially if I drafted well, then yeah, I mean everything is about what the future could bring. So definitely the high ceiling for me.
All righty. So, question from Ethan Sowers in the chat here. First of all, thank you for listening, Ethan.
Yeah,
he says, you already know that I'm high on Trent Penix this year. For those of you who don't know, that is the tight end wide receiver hybrid over there at NC State. He would love to hear our thoughts on him this season. J Mill, Willie B, either one of you have strong thoughts on him over there with the Wolfpack?
Not particularly. I'm trying to see, kind of go to the ranking, see where we had him. I guess we're not as high as Ethan is on, and I know Ethan's had some great drafts here recently, so maybe I should move him up if he knows something we don't. We've got him in the 50 range, which would be like a 4th tight end. Trying to remember who was their tight end last year, Jared? Can you remember?
I'm looking at it right now. He was their number 1 tight end last year.
Yeah,
but he had 8 catches for 111 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm not sure what he's heard. Maybe Ethan can type in the chat what he's heard to make him so high on Penix, because he's not that high on mine.
I know several people who've kind of been on the Penix train the last couple of years. Again, he's got really good size, kind of really does have some receiving ability that could be utilized if the offensive coordinator is right. And again, they bring in Robert Anae, which is a great hire in my opinion. He's known for using these kind of bigger body guys. Like, go back to Syracuse, Aronde Gadsden. Go back to Virginia, where you had Jelani Woods, Keaton Thompson. I forget the other receiver's name there, but like, all of these guys were huge. So you give him a big target like Trent Penix, who, again, people have been gushing about his talent for years now, haven't really seen it yet. I think he's a fun upside pick because, Ethan, you just took him as your tight end 3.
Yeah,
I think that's a fun little upside pick if you really do believe in him.
Yeah, and you just refreshed my memory. Ethan just wrote the article on the big tight ends at, kind of sleeper big tight ends on Campus to Canton. I just read that article and should have recalled that note about the big tight ends that Anae likes now that he's at North Carolina State.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it could absolutely be a ton of fun. I know also some people are starting to take shots on Juice Farine, the true freshman there as well. But I don't think he should be going in a redraft league. He's somebody that if he pops year 1, he's definitely a guy you'll grab as a waiver wire pick. You shouldn't be wasting a roster spot, in my opinion, on him to start the season, especially when they do have a guy like Trent Penix that, they've been talking high about him for a while. So, Willie B, let's talk about your Jermaine Burton pick there out of Alabama. One of the biggest burns a lot of us had last year. Are you just buying? Clearly it seems like you're buying the dip here. You think he'll have a better year this year?
Yeah, definitely buying the dip. There's, like I said, I mean, you get guys a year ago that are supposed to go in the top 5 rounds. They crash and burn. Doesn't mean they're not talented. Just maybe wasn't their time. So now, the 20th round? Why not take a chance here on the upside, since that's what we're talking about?
Yeah, I'm trying to see who. Go ahead.
No, my pick is coming up shortly, but I was going to go back to that when there's a lot of Alabama players going off the board right now.
Yeah,
Yeah, wow.
We got 4 in the last 2 rounds.
And so a handcuff there too with Buckner and Milrow with Bacon.
But when we talk about the upside of a couple of these guys, especially Ethan's question, I still question why there's a couple of guys still out here. And we'll see. Tiger's been sniping me, but with that, I still would rather have Stover and take. I had him as our top 10. Rather than taking a chance on Penix at this point.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair. And TJ Dupree comes off there in the 20th round. I think people are buying a little bit too much into the idea that the Tommy Rees quote unquote tight end. I think that is something where I think people are misunderstanding talent for system, because Michael Mayer and Cole Kmet are 2 NFL tight ends now. I think that's the reason why they're so heavily targeted. Again, obviously Notre Dame's good at coaching these guys up. Same with Brian Kelly and everything like that. But even still, given the passing limitations we kind of expect from Bama this year with whoever starts at quarterback, I don't think I really want to. I'm hesitant to invest in any of their wide receivers right now, let alone one of their tight ends. So we will definitely see. There goes DK, we talked about him earlier. Were either one of you kind of looking at him around this range?
Yeah, I was actually just he was probably in my next 4 or 5 receivers. I was kind of filling up the queue now, and he was right there in the next 4 or 5 that I probably would have taken.
He was still a little bit further down. I still probably have a handful ahead of him.
Nope, fair enough.
And real quick, I didn't realize, I didn't even, on the Dupre comment you made, Jared, until you mentioned that on your podcast this week, I hadn't really made that association, as far as, giving him the value. I was just looking at his stats at Maryland thinking, okay, he's going to an offense that, uses the tight end decently, not overly, but I tend to lean on a tight end when the quarterback is uncertain. So that's kind of where I value Dupre at Alabama, not so much with, the coach coming over from Notre Dame and that affiliation, but I hadn't even really made that connection until you mentioned that on your podcast this past week.
All right, Jeremy, you were
2 weeks ago.
I think it was 2 weeks ago, and I also mentioned it on BTR this week as well. Cody,
that was it. Yeah. On BTR, you mentioned it this week. That's right.
Cody Epser, that is who you're kind of planting your flag down there at BYU. What do you like about it? What do you like about him?
Yeah, well, first he was the guy that was next that I wanted next in the queue when I was kind of auto fired with Warner. So I'm glad he came back around. Um, you know, there's kind of a debate. There's two or three guys at BYU that people are uncertain who will be the true wide receiver one. Before he went down to injury, he had a couple of games, 19 or 20 points over kind of that threshold. I think we all look at kind of that 20-point range. He started to leave, then he came back. I was watching a lot of the social media chatter when he came back and how excited the team seemed to be that he was coming back. So I think he's a leader on that team, and I think he's the best receiver on that team. And they're going to have to pass the ball a lot, so probably more than usual. And I think they have Slovis this year, so I'm not totally down on Slovis as their quarterback. So I think he'll be useful.
Yeah, I mean, the BYU quarterbacks have been pretty good the last couple of years. I agree with you, Jeremy, that BYU has the worst defense in the Big 12, at least when it comes to roster strength, by a pretty decent margin. So I think they're going to be forced to pass in order to keep up with a lot of teams this year. Mm-hmm. So I think it's possible we might see two wide receivers there do well. I'm a big Chase Roberts fan. Some of their beat writers were describing him as a guy that was stepping up as a wide receiver one option. So I like both of those guys. Yeah. And BYU put a lot of effort into bringing Epps back out of the transfer portal. So they clearly want to use him. They sold him on something.
Right.
All right, Jeremy, where are you going now? I'm
taking a little bit more of a gamble here, just going strictly, system guy here with Burns.
Yep. I talked about this just last week on CTN.
Yeah, just really, really gambling that he's going to be the guy. I mean, he's similar to Epps. He's one of two or three guys that could be wide receiver one. I think when you get to round 22, you bet on the guy in a great system in terms of passing system that could really benefit a wide receiver one. He's the guy I think is going to do it there. North Texas, it's not too much of a gamble in the 22nd round to put some money on a North Texas receiver.
Absolutely. Brett Pondy asks, what is the latest on the UCLA running back competition? Not much has changed since the spring, considering they haven't been practicing. It's definitely something I'm going to keep a very close eye on once fall gets around here. From everything I heard, it's still TJ Harden, RB1. Carson Steele, if he can figure some things out, probably ends up as the RB2. And then from there, it just becomes a question of how much do they split the workload. I don't think either one of the guys are going to get what Zach Charbonnet got last year. I think this is much more close to what we saw with Charbonnet and Britton Brown 2 years ago, where Charbonnet is probably the guy that you liked on a more consistent basis. So that's where I think TJ Harden ends up being. But they'll probably both have pretty good weeks as far as I'm concerned. Another philosophical question here from Austin. I'll say his question first, verbatim, and then Austin, I hope you don't mind if I do this. I'm going to kind of change up the question a little bit to how I'm kind of interpreting it. Austin asks, regardless of how low you might personally feel about a guy compared to his ADP / consensus rankings, how far will you let a player slide before you feel like you have to draft him? So I'll kind of rephrase this a little bit. Look at the guys in the top 5 rounds. There's guys that go in the top 5 rounds consistently that we all don't really like. We would never draft them that high. But I say pick a guy in the 5th round you don't like that goes that high typically. How far are you willing to let them drop before you're finally willing to take the chance on them? So who wants to take that one first?
To me, that's so to say. To me, it depends on the position. But I mean, it's like say if we have one of our, let's say, our top 7 overall quarterbacks, I'm probably going to take that. I'm not going to let him slide too much further. Now, if we're talking about a tight end, then yes, I will. I'll let that slide.
Fair enough, Jeremy. How are you feeling about this?
Yeah, I think this really kind of emphasizes the fact that you need to really be solid with setting up your tiers, and you can't really get sold too much on one guy as much as where a guy fits within a group. So recently in drafts, like they're again, I load my rankings into Fantrax, and I'll put a few guys over in the queue just to make sure I've got some there. But if I've got 5 guys in the queue and I look at it and really say, look, I'd really be heartbroken if I miss out on this one guy, I might bump him up and take him a little earlier, really like I did with Card. I didn't want to lose him. I've talked too much about him this offseason. I want to put my money where my mouth is. It'd make me sick if I saw another guy getting, a couple of 30 or 40-point games from Card, and I didn't after all I've talked about him. So I might bump him up a couple slots if he's within the 3 or 4 guys I'm liking at that point. But I'm not going to bump him up 10 rounds just because of what I said. So that's where putting him in the proper tier is what really makes the most sense. And then, putting him ahead of a couple guys, not necessarily 5 or 6 rounds, is what makes the most sense to me.
Hold on. Ricky White was still on the board in the 23rd round. Incredible pick by Baconfield there. That's a great pick. But another great pick, in my opinion, was Willie's last pick there with Austin Jones. Willie, this is a great Zag pick, in my opinion. Marshawn Lloyd, I just looked, went in the end of the 7th round. You get Austin Jones here 15 rounds later, in my opinion, a guy who has an equal chance at being the number 1 running back for Lincoln Riley's system. I'd say I feel pretty good about that. Are you as stoked as I am about that?
I'm very. I like him more than Marshawn, but we'll see. But getting in the 22nd round, I had to do it. I was amazed that he was still sitting there.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. Who are you going with now?
I'm gonna go with another guy. I was gonna go a different route, but like we say, we're gonna stick to the board, and we're gonna go Watson out of Memphis.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are you not concerned about kind of how crowded that room is a little bit? I mean, you still got Javon Ducker over there. Is it Brian Thomas? I forget the guy's name.
Yeah, Thomas.
Thomas over there still. Are you a little worried about that, or
all rooms are
Brandon?
crowded,
That's his name.
But we go with the senior. He had a little over 900 yards last year, so
they sold him on something.
Exactly. And in the 23rd round, why not?
Why not? I agree. I totally agree. Brett asking, I believe this is a question towards you guys. Are you guys going to be doing a regular podcast closer to the season? You do all your graphics and everything, but you guys do pretty well in these pods.
Yeah, you know more than anybody how time-consuming all of this is. So, Willie's really been pushing me. We think you got to find a unique space, but we think what might work, we got to put it, a little around this, is the waiver draft that we have every week. And we were fortunate enough to have guys like yourself and John Lobb and a few others participate, where we draft the guys that we think will make the best waiver picks for the week. We thought maybe that could be a good live podcast, or we record it to go live. So basically we have 4 guys, we have our 6 waiver picks, and we do it, all over 30 minutes, where we have a nice little quick one there. Let me make my pick, but that's the one we're considering, because I think there's enough good content out there with you guys and BTR and, a few others where you can get kind of the updates on players. But, for something specific, maybe we'll make a podcast out of the waiver draft that we do every Sunday and post on Mondays.
I think that'd be a great idea. Again, I literally thought about that the other day, because I was trying to think of ways for me to make the in-season content a little bit more engaging than what we have been doing. And again, I'm proud of what we do every year, but you're always trying to innovate. And I literally thought about oh yeah, what if we did a waiver draft every week and just brought on 12 people to draft, and that's a fun way to do it. And I'm like, wait a minute, Jared, don't be dummy. J Mill and Willie already do that. They sue the pants off of you for that.
Yeah. We wouldn't sue you, but yeah, how about this? If we can't get the energy to put it together on our end, we'll bring our waiver draft to you to host.
I think that might be something we could talk about. Again, we'll see how we can incorporate it in.
A little 30 minutes on a Sunday to get it ready for Monday.
Exactly. All right, let's see. You took Javon Baker there. You're taking. I kind of like your little run of receivers here, Jeremy. Are you going to continue it here, or are you going to go different position?
I think I might. Let me see who's. Yeah, I don't particularly like any of the running backs that are in this group, or I'm not scared they'll be taken. So I'm going to go with one more that I think will just be a fun team to watch. And I wouldn't mind having somebody to kind of root for when I'm watching them, since I think they're going to be in the national spotlight quite a bit. I'll take Jimmy Horn, the first guy to get to choose his number with Deion Sanders' new regime. I think that means something. I don't necessarily know that he'll have a better season than Weaver, but I think it does mean something that he was the first player to get to choose his number in Colorado.
I think that's a fair point. I personally like the value here in the 24th round way better than like some people who would take him in like the 7th, 8th round earlier in this offseason. So another one of these guys where people have come off of him, I'm starting to buy back in a little bit given where he's going in drafts.
Right, yeah. We're in the last 6 rounds here, so let's like I said, you sometimes you just want to draft players that you'll have fun watching because they're going to be on TV a lot.
Exactly. Tommy says, I have 3 UGA players. Damn it. Tommy, that's on you, buddy. Listen, that's on you. Like, you're usually loading up on Tennessee players, but now you got all the Georgia guys. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Pretty sure Nate Marquise just heard that and had a heart attack somewhere. He doesn't know why yet. Love the Ahmad Anderson pick there from Justin. That's a great pick right there. Cartavius Norton, that's a fun upside pick right there. Because, again, if Jairo Brock's out, I think Norton could be in for a really, really good season. Tommy lamenting the fact that all of the Tennessee players have been taken. What can I say, Tommy? It's a good offense.
The Temple pick made me look back. I missed the tight end coming off the board. I knew he had, but I just didn't see where. So it looks like Martin Robinson came off in the 15th round. That was still probably a good place for him.
Listen to CTN tomorrow. I talk about the fact that Martin Robinson, for as many good signs are pointing to him, he still goes way too late in drafts. So amongst returning tight ends, how do you think Martin Robinson ranks in terms of targets per game?
For last year?
From last year.
Total? As far as returning, I'd guess like 15th or something like that.
He is 4th in the country in returning targets per game for tight ends.
Yeah.
The only tight ends that finish higher than him, Brock Bowers, Grant Keithy when he was healthy, and Jatavian Sanders. And Martin Robinson's going like 8 to 10 rounds after those guys.
Yeah, and here's what I wanted to see. What's crazy, how many total did you say, Jared?
He had 5.4 targets per game last year.
Yeah, so he had in his last 3 games, it went 11, 2, and then 14. So 26 of those were in 2 of his last 3 games. Crazy.
Yep. And that was when Temple went absolutely nuts at the end of the year. Like the second half of the season, they were just like, screw it. We're throwing 45, 50, 60 times per game, and nobody's going to stop us. Did it work? Not really, but like it was fun to watch.
Yeah, those are the games where Warner had back-to-back 300, 400, and then a 500-yard game.
Yep.
I think so. It's crazy.
Willie, I am curious about this Kanata Mumfield pick here from Pitt. Pitt has had really good wide receiver ones the last couple of years. Obviously, Jordan Addison was his own monster. But even Jared Wayne last year was kind of an underrated guy for CFF. If I can look him up here real quick. Yeah, he finishes the wide receiver 44, had some pretty good weeks throughout the season. I believe he got as high as, where is it? Or he had really, yeah. So he was a pretty solid guy throughout the year. What makes you want to go after Kanata Mumfield over a guy maybe like Bub Means, who has gotten some praise this offseason? What do you like about Mumfield?
I liked him the year before. I think getting that year after the move, I think he's ready to take that jump. And so, you like I say, you target the specific guys that you like, and you just can't beat that here in the 25th. I would want to say last year, I think may have been eyeing him, really high, maybe 15th if I remember correctly. So getting him here, why not?
All right, fair enough. You're back on the clock there, Willie. Real quick, responding to Sean here. Sean asked, do we ever do a Power 5 only draft? He plays in a Power 5 only league, which a lot of people do. I don't know, Sean, if we're ever going to do one of these shows with a Power 5 only. If we were maybe a little bit earlier on and not as close to the season, I probably would have considered doing 1 week as a Power 5 only draft. But I definitely think over the next couple of weeks, I am going to probably put together a slow draft best ball for Power 5 only. And if you're interested in that, Sean, or anybody else listening to this show, again, I am on Twitter at CFF_Jared. Just DM me there, and I will get you into that best ball league, and we can kind of run it as a mock for you guys who are in the Power 5 only leagues. Because, a lot of people play Power 5 only because, like 133 teams, that's a little bit too much to keep track of sometimes. So don't blame me whatsoever. I am curious, does Tom take the guy I think he's going to take here, because he just told Michael to hush in the chat about
Georgia?
it? No, Tennessee guy. Yep, he took him, Ramel Keaton.
Oh, yeah. It's amazing. Wasn't he left over in our Dynasty supplemental draft?
He
Jared?
was. I pointed that out on BTR, and I considered going in and looking for a guy to drop. Couldn't really find anybody that I was really wanted to drop for him, but I got him on my watch list for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I guess that those first wires will run tomorrow. Willie, did you see that? Keaton wasn't even taken in our supplemental draft, so that seems to be the player that the most money will be spent on tomorrow in the first round of waivers.
Most likely.
Yeah, I'm sure somebody will try to blow their 100 on it.
I doubt somebody's going to blow 100 on it, but
yeah, what is that? Yeah, I forget if we have a 250 budget on that one for the year.
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it 250? Is it only 250?
I think
Yeah,
it's only
that's
250.
250. All right, I'm going to go. Speaking of those Miami guys that left,
all right,
let's
there you
get one
go.
that's going down to a small school. I like both guys that left also, along with Parrish at Miami. So I'll get Franklin as kind of the big fish in the small pond, as our boy Mitch Hart likes to talk about.
Yes, sir.
And he, I think he's like, what is he? Is he 230 pounds? Let's see
I
what
think he's
weighing
240. He is quite literally
now.
a very big fish in a small pond.
Yeah. So I'm just going to hope, he can get 12 touchdowns and even 300 yards. I'll be happy with that.
And there's nobody else on that team, so hopefully he can get in there and make some noise over there, because they got nothing else. I mean, they got Tyrone Howell, who's good for 300-yard game every year. But other than that, they got nobody else really to rely on over there. We're in the final. What was that?
I think I forgot Howell. Did I take Howell?
Not in this draft, I don't think.
No, wasn't this one? All right. I think I just wrote about him today then. Yeah, okay. All right.
Well, you're back on the clock here, J Mill.
Yeah, speaking to the guy who talked about when to move up and take a guy, this guy was probably 6th in my queue, but I just want a piece of him now after what I heard Matt Rule saying earlier this week at the press conferences. I want a little bit of Sims at Nebraska. I think he may finally live up to all of his potential at Nebraska.
All right, fair enough. And I think that is probably your last quarterback, I imagine, J Mill. I think it's your 6th quarterback there.
Is that what we can take? Are we capped at 6?
No, you can take more if you want to. It's just I usually cap myself at 6. Maybe you think differently than I do.
I like to go 3 deep. That's a good strategy discussion. If we're starting 2, minimally, I like to have a 3 deep. So 6 would be the minimum. Sometimes you really like a guy as a flyer. Maybe you take a 7th, or you kind of get into a 4th, a 4th teamer kind of guy. And in my queue specifically, where'd the queue go? Yeah, I do have one more quarterback I might take, but we'll just see how the other guys fall out here in the last 4 rounds.
Sounds good. Speaking of the last 4 rounds here, this is the rounds that can sometimes make or break CFF championships, especially in a best ball format where you don't get those transactions and everything like that. this is where you find those hidden gems right here. Everybody else is kind of passing on them, but you have your eye on certain players here. What do you guys look for to take shots this late in a draft? So, Willie, I guess we'll start with you, and then we'll go to Jeremy.
I'm still looking for those starters. I'm seeing a couple of guys that obviously people are taking chances on. Obviously health, but then I'm looking at these starters that may have been missed.
Fair point.
Making sure, didn't miss any.
Yeah, punish people for trying to take high upside backups. Meanwhile, you're taking the guys that you think are actually going to play. Jeremy,
Right.
What are you looking for in these last couple rounds?
Yeah, I'm kind of going the opposite. I'm kind of going back to the guy that asked the yo-yo question earlier. I'm looking if there's any left for those guys that, are a little bit inconsistent, that might be able to just have that sporadic game and a good mismatch, or, just because maybe they were behind by 40 points and, they're the number one receiver on a bad team, who might get his 12 catches for 180 yards, and that might be his, one of his only 2 20-point games, but I'm trying to get one of those guys in that category here.
Yeah, absolutely. You're hardly going to find, at least people are going to put up 20 points a game this late. If you find a guy this late, quite frankly, maybe got a little bit lucky, or you're really playing the ADP game and you're just like, hey, I know this guy's getting 20 points a game, but I'm going to wait on him until the 30th round, in which case I ask, what are you doing? You need to get that man on your roster as soon as you can. But, oh my God, Malik Sherrod was still on the board in the 27th round? That's highway robbery. Baconfield, you're doing fantastic finding some of these values, dude. I'm loving some of his picks. It's like Ricky White in 23rd, Malik Sherrod there in the 27th. Like, oh my God, dude. I'm jealous. Hey, Willie B, we just talked about Tyrone Howell.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
So,
Going back to that, it's just, getting guys who you think are, should start, should be the guys, and they're just for some reason sitting there.
Yeah, fair enough.
Good time to plug the Twitter there. I'm a little bit lighter today, Jared, because we just finished all of our kind of player capsules, if you want to call them that, for the rankings by position. We finished with the wide receiver. The SBC was the last one, and I think we mentioned Howell as probably the third best receiver in the SBC today. So to get him that late's not too bad. He's got a 20-point potential.
Yeah, absolutely. Brett, you're asking in the chat, am I going to rank kickers? I mean, Brett, check out CTN's episode tomorrow, because we do tight end crash course. But guess what? Me and John Lobb, the Gridiron Scholar, we went and did DSTs and kickers as well, because we're just that much of diehards. We went through the top 12 at DST and kickers just to give people a little bit of crash course, as well as what other things to look for at those positions. So
that's perfect, because I mentioned we're done. We're not technically done, but I really won't do as many capsule write-ups on them. We'll have our kickers on Tuesday, and we don't go nearly as in depth, but we like to. We don't even rank them. Yeah, we just go tier 1, tier 2, and it's really alphabetized. We're not even bothering to rank within the tiers. But here's 10 guys you should get from teams that we know are going to score a lot of points, or the kicker is going to be used a lot. In 2 groups, really just giving you a good top 20, top 24 kickers that you could look out for. That'll be Tuesday for us. Yeah.
It was it. We got CTN coming out tomorrow. You'll see. I'll have my top 12 defenses there, as well as my top 12 kickers there. I'll ask you boys real quick. I have a Mountain West defense in my top 3 defenses for the year. Can y'all guess which defense that is?
I mean, my instinct would say San Diego State.
Wrong.
No?
Ooh,
I wish I had this in front of me. No, go ahead. Tell us.
Air Force.
Air Force.
Air Force finished as the top 6 DST last year. Didn't rely on defensive touchdowns, takeaways like other defenses did last year. They're very consistent week to week. And one thing I really talk about on the podcast tomorrow is that when you're targeting DSTs outside of getting your Alabamas, Georgias, Michigans, where they just dominate their schedule and out-talent everybody, look for teams that run the ball a crap ton and are extremely slow in their pace of play. The teams that constantly milk the clock and limit the number of drives that the offenses that they're facing can put points up on them. Air Force was second in the country in terms of the slowest offense in the country. They run the ball in neutral situations 88% of the time last year. They are going to be a team that milks, and milks some more. And guess what? They also have, according to our numbers, the easiest schedule in the country. So I'm all in on Air Force being a super sneaky defense this year.
All right.
Anthony LaFleur says, I think Nebraska will win the title. Anthony, I'll take whatever you're smoking.
Big Ten?
I say Big Ten title? I can maybe. Big Ten West?
I was picking. Who did he say?
He said Nebraska.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
That would be the ultimate coaching job by Matt Rule. If he did all the credit.
Maybe he meant the division title.
Division title I can see. Again, Big Ten West is kind of open there.
Yeah, and it's the last chance to win a division title in the Big Ten.
FSU and Clemson coming to the Big Ten. Did I see? I'm going to look up. Did I miss something on Twitter in the last 2 hours?
No. Yeah. What could have been better than this, though? Then that's not any news compared to what we gave everybody.
Recruit CFB says there's a legit rumor the Big Ten could add Clemson, Florida State, Oregon, and Washington this week.
What?
I'm gonna wait till I see some more reputable sources. I'd be surprised if Clemson didn't try to join the SEC before they try to join the Big Ten.
Exactly.
That would make a lot more sense in my opinion. Unless South Carolina and Florida just have that much pull to where they're like, yeah, we're never letting in Clemson or Florida State, in which case, why?
No, egos should be put aside. Clemson and Florida State belong in the SEC.
Yeah, if they're going to go somewhere, they belong in the SEC compared to the Big Ten.
That'd be great. There's few things that could upgrade the SEC, but those two teams joining could upgrade the SEC.
And the ACC, in my opinion, is a pretty good one in terms of it could split apart and go to have teams go to either the Big Ten or the SEC. Like Florida State, Clemson, they feel like SEC teams, but Pitt, Boston College, Syracuse, Louisville, all those guys feel like Big Ten teams, in my opinion.
Yeah, maybe Big 12. I could see Louisville for in the Big 12, but then that's probably a downgrade now in their opinion. Yeah, there went Mordecai. Tracy, Willie B took Mordecai.
FSU to Big Ten because of rivalry with Nebraska.
What?
Maybe I got to catch. I would say maybe from past championship games and stuff like that, but that was decades ago at this point, right?
That's like saying Oklahoma has a rivalry with FSU just from being in the Orange Bowl in the 80s,
What about Miami? Miami would be SEC. They would get Miami into the SEC. Too much money involved there.
True. Yeah.
Miami's got a rivalry with Nebraska. Anthony, I gotta ask you, buddy. If you're a Nebraska fan, I want you to cite your sources on these rivalries with Nebraska. Nebraska, Oklahoma, that's a real rivalry.
Exactly, and then that's going to be in the SEC too, though. But so that's not going to happen.
Oregon would go Big Ten. I would say Oregon goes Big Ten. It makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense, in my opinion, for a lot of the West Coast schools to move over into the Big Ten if they choose between SEC or Big Ten. But as we're kind of seeing, some of these Pac-12 schools are kind of bouncing to the Big 12. Maybe the Big 12 really becomes that West Coast super conference. That could be a pretty interesting twist right there.
Yeah. By the way, Ethan just made a great 29th round pick, a receiver there. Probably Houston's potential wide receiver 1, but likely wide receiver 2 with Brown, the other true freshman from last year.
All right, Sean Schreiner thinks, or he says, I'm a Nebraska fan, and I think we'll be fortunate to get to 6 wins this year.
There you go.
I think 6 wins is perfect for Nebraska this year. I think they make a bowl game. It's a good sign for Matt Rule moving forward. They honestly deserved 6 wins last year, even though it was a crap show over there, because like they lost. I think they went 1-8 in 1-score games. Like you would think, just like on a win standpoint, there's some regression that kind of happens there. I mean, we saw it with Iowa State last couple of years, where like they lost a bunch of 1-score games. The next year they won a bunch of 1-score games, and then now they're kind of meeting in the middle a little bit. Michael Weddington with the absolute truth. If the Big Ten's going to add all of these teams, they need to be renamed. Facts.
Yeah, it's a little crazy.
Yeah, and man-made make. We got a lot of Nebraska fans in the chat tonight, apparently.
Interesting. Yeah.
He says, I'm a Cornhusker too, and I think our cap is 7 wins.
Hey, look. Marshall off the board. There we go. Cam Fancher.
So you got connections there, Marshall. Jeremy, do you think that Fancher pick is a pretty good one there?
Yeah, at this point, I mean, I don't know if you saw him last year, but the kid can run like crazy. He might be close to the fastest kid on the team at quarterback. So, I mean, he's got that ability, not even by design, but when he's just, rolling out or getting rushed, to pick up 20 or 30 yards or scramble for a 60, yard touchdown. That won't happen all the time. But, I mean, he's capable of getting 50 yards a game. He's just not going to throw it that much with them leaning on Ali again. But he could be a sneaky dual threat who in the 29th round is definitely worth it, because like he'll have a 20-point game probably at least three times.
I am a terrible host because I just realized I made Jeremy talk about Willie's pick. Willie, talk about your pick, man. What do you think about Fancher?
Oh, no. Well, I thought we were going to talk about Mordecai, but
Mordecai.
No,
we'll talk about both of them.
He and I talked about Fancher in our last draft. Like I say, last round. I mean, he may be he's the last quarterback that I'm definitely going to take. So starter value, like you say, that potential of getting 20. That's what I'm looking for this late.
Absolutely.
Now, with Mordecai, I mean, the kid can just play. So if he's given the chance and hopefully is at that fickle, hopefully he can just continue what he was doing.
So
SMU and then OU.
So the 4 interception spring game does not deter you whatsoever.
Absolutely not. I mean, you have to test your defense, and who's to say that their defense isn't good?
I mean, it probably is. It's Wisconsin. They've always had a pretty good defense.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you gotta test and see what kind of receivers you're dealing with.
No, fair enough.
He'll figure it out.
And by the way, fun Fancher fact, which I didn't even realize. His last 3 regular season games, 21 points, 34 points, and 25 points were his last 3 games of the regular season last year.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, Marshall runs it 71% of the time. Like, he's going to run it quite a bit.
Yeah. And a lot of his runs will be just from scrambling. Like he's gonna be told, like, if nobody's open, tuck it and run.
Oh, fair enough.
Yeah. Here's the flyer pick.
Final pick. Here you go.
I was going to take a running back. It was between Calvin Hill at Texas State, who will be playing a lot more because I think Parr is out with an injury. But I'm going to take Bachmeier at Louisiana Tech because I was wrong on them last year being a really good passing offense, but I think they'll develop here in year 2 and with a much better quarterback in that system. He's not the best quarterback, but I think it's going to be a system play with Bachmeier.
Fair enough. Willie, you got your last pick coming up here. You got your eye on somebody, or are you kind of waiting to see what falls to you?
No. I know who's going to be there. So
nobody else on him. That's how confident Willie is.
Yeah, probably not. But I know he'll
say it.
No, if somebody wants to come and snipe me, that's That's fine. Just piggyback on it earlier, we said that Gabriel was our number 8 overall. He was my number 7. So he's got to throw to other people. We said I wasn't going to take Farouk. We knew that. So we're going to take Austin Stogner with our last pick.
All righty.
Oh, there you go. There you go. All right. Makes sense.
I love the pick from Tiger Bob there, Jalil Polk. Like, again, McMillan and Adunze go off super early, but like Polk's going to have some pretty good games throughout the season. Like we saw already last year, he had a couple 21-point games. So I'm feeling that pick right there, Bob. You did good there. I need to look more into Blue Smith. I've seen him go off in several drafts recently, and he's an Ohio State transfer coming over to Western Kentucky. He's been there for a couple of years. So we've seen guys like Sam Wiglis pop off when they go elsewhere. So I'll take another look at Blue Smith here pretty soon. Arlen Gunn in the 30th round. Great pick there, right? DFS.
Who do you even take? Who finished it off there?
Jaquan Jackson.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
That's our Michael Weddington. Did Justin Fields go? Ha, you're funny, Michael. This is the part of the show, gentlemen, where first I'm going to ask you, again, we did like a mid-draft checkup. What do you think about your teams here at the end? What grade would you give yourself?
Oh, I mean, I'm going to be biased. I've got an A team here.
Heck yeah, I love it. Love the confidence.
Yeah, I mean, why would I take the guys if I didn't like them?
Definitely.
I think I did what I wanted. I made up, for kind of the lack of super impactful running backs in the beginning by getting some guys that should be their team's guy with Grant and Franklin and Malachi Thomas. Again, they're not the biggest names, but they seem to have their backfields in their hands. So, I think I made up for some of that running back lack of running back talent in the beginning with those guys. And yeah, I'm excited. I think Langan at tight end is a sneaky pick too, as one of your last tight ends who his first year full-time tight end at Rutgers last year, and he had 30-plus catches. So he's a former quarterback who's very athletic and could be a sneaky tight end pick too.
No, fair enough. Willie, what about you, man? Like, we're looking at your draft here. I'm kind of bringing it back up to the top here. How do you feel about what you were able to do?
No, I feel really good about it. Only, I missed out on Hunter, but then we go back and in the middle of the round, I mean, we got 4 string of wide receivers that all should be number 1s, at worst at number 2. So definitely made up for that in the middle of the round. So I don't feel like we should have taken Harrison or anything like that. At 5, I feel lucky to get Penix Jr. to be honest, where we got him, and then turning around and getting Gore and Badger. I mean, we're going to be just fine. I feel.
All righty. I'm glad you guys feel confident about your teams real quick. Michael, he meant Julian Fleming, not Justin Fields. Julian Fleming did not go in this draft. What do you guys think about that? Again, we talked about some Jalin Polk. I know Chris K recently put out an article about the big wide receiver 3, especially in best balls, like grabbing that third option in high-powered offenses like Jalin Polk and stuff and guys like that. Do you think Julian Fleming's a guy that probably should have gone off the board in this draft somewhere?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, maybe at the very end. I mean, it's a best ball with 30 rounds. So, 25th through 30th round, you can't be mad at it. But the problem there is he's a guy who's coming back with the same 2 receivers in front of him that were there last year. So what would make us think he'll do any better than, what he averaged last year, which was 11 points. And again, I know it's best ball, so it's a little bit different because he, could have his game where he's got 2 touchdowns or another game with 10 catches. But, I mean, he's on the team with 10 receivers that were there last year when he only had 29 catches total.
Yeah, fair enough. Speaking of guys that were not drafted, this is kind of the second thing we do at the end of the show here, y'all. Quarterbacks. I don't have my rankings up, so I can't really quickly reference who's still on the board that I'm surprised by. So I'm just going to direct this towards you guys. Mm-hmm. Willie, we'll start with you. quarterbacks that you were kind of surprised made it through 30 rounds here that did not get drafted?
I look at a guy like Gunnar Watson, Clay Millen. I felt like those two guys should be on a team. Outside of that, I mean, it's like Slovis. He probably should have had a chance taken on him. But there's always going to have to be somebody that gets picked up in the waiver wire. So, everybody can't get drafted.
Right.
What about you, Jeremy? Anybody stand out to you at quarterback?
Yeah, my guy who's in a similar category as Bachmeier, who I think could be a system guy, but I'm not quite as sure that he'll win the job yet, is Chandler Rogers at North Texas. That's why I went with Bachmeier instead. So, there's not. So, you don't even know if he's going to be the starter yet. So you can't even really take that gamble unless you handcuff him with the other North Texas guy. Van Dyke from Miami would be the other one that stands out a little bit because he's probably got that potential for a couple big games.
I'm kind of surprised. I'm looking through that list, like just the Fantrax order here and everything. Cooper Legas out of Utah State, dual threat guy in a system that likes to pass a whole ton, missing their top running back. Again, do I draft him high? No, but I'm willing to kind of take the shot on a system that's produced as great quarterbacks in the past. Gary Bohannon, I love Byron Brown. I hope he wins the starting job, but things are kind of looking like Gary Bohannon's going to probably at least start the year over there. So I'm surprised that whoever took Byron Brown, I don't remember who did. It was somewhere. Yeah, it was DFS there. Took him in the 21st round. I'm kind of surprised he didn't handcuff Gary Bohannon there. Granted, he already had one handcuff between Hornsby and Finley, so maybe that's why he didn't want to have two handcuffs there. Mm-hmm. But other than that, nobody really sticks out to me. What about running back? Jeremy, we'll start with you this time. Who at running back kind of stands out to you as you were shocked they made it through?
Yeah, like I said, I loaded up my ranking, so just looking at the next on the board for me would have been Jordan Houston, who we talked about.
Okay, fair enough.
I think probably worth a chance. And Cam Porter at Northwestern. He's going to be all day.
Wow, I'm surprised. That's a shocker to me.
Yeah. Those are the two right there for me.
What about you, Willie? Anybody at running back stand out to you as somebody who should have been taken?
I'm checking this one guy here. I know he's going. Let's see. To be honest, no. And I was really off the running back trail early. I remember Jay Mills, needing so many, but I ended up getting mine. So I really wasn't keen on the running back situation going late. But just going through here, I don't see anybody that just stands out. I mean.
No, fair enough. I mean, sometimes it'd be like that. People did a good job drafting the value, so good job, y'all. This is a compliment to everybody in this draft. Wide receivers, though. Willie, wide receivers, who stands out to you as should have come off the board?
I had actually looked at him earlier. I feel like Corey Kroon probably could have had a chance taken on him. I know Taylor Morin usually gets drafted.
Who?
The Wake Forest wide receiver.
Taylor Morin.
Taylor Morin. Sorry. He usually gets grabbed up.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned Corey Crooms. I'm kind of liking Elijah Spencer a little bit more. The more I hear out of some of the Minnesota wide receiver, some of the Minnesota coaches and everything over there, it sounds like he was. And Tommy agrees with me. Elijah Spencer is still on the board. Sounds like he's the one that's got buzz around him right now. I know Chris Ottman-Bell comes back and everything like that. That team says they're going to pass a little bit more this year. And if Spencer continues to be the standout there, I might start taking a little bit more shots there as well. Because we've seen Minnesota, even though we think of them as a run-heavy team, think back to Tyler Johnson. Think back to Rashad Bateman. We've seen them have absolutely incredible wide receivers over there. So...
Right. I'm going to stand by the Crooms comment. We got challenged on that online yesterday on Instagram, I think, with a Minnesota fan saying he might not even be the fifth best receiver. But again, we can only go as deep as like the local reporters. And Jared, I think you kind of rely on the 24/7 and Rivals guys like
Yes,
we
sir.
do. And they said he's probably the best slot they've seen there in the last 10 years, and they have no doubt he's going to be the starting slot receiver. So, I think Crooms is one. I wouldn't make him one of my 3 starters, but I think for a wide receiver 4 or 5 or in this best ball, it's surprising he's there. What's funny is, I've got Harris way higher than anybody, and I move guys into the queue above him, and that's why these things are fun. As I mentioned earlier on Twitter, you can really check your rankings versus your gut feel.
Mm-hmm.
And we had Trey Harris up fairly high, but I just kept passing him up. I couldn't take him because I'm just not so sure what's going to happen with the wide receivers in Ole Miss. So he's there as like, I think we've got him at like a wide receiver 50 or something. And I didn't even take him, and I could have several times just because my gut didn't feel right taking Trey Harris.
Dude, I'm honestly kind of the same way. Something I need to be better about in the future is like I do so many of these drafts. I should be changing my rankings after every single one because I agree with you. There are guys where I'm like, okay, here's my rankings.
Right.
I'm technically supposed to take him next because of my rankings, but man, do I kind of feel a little bit better about the guys behind him. That should be reflected in my rankings the next time that I updated them. Because it all changes once you get into the draft.
Yeah, and that's why these things are so fun because you take your home league more serious, you take your high dollar leagues more serious. These are ways to check that for anybody listening. Like get in a couple of these, every summer just to make sure, or once you finish your rankings, jump into a couple of these just to make sure your rankings are what they really should be.
I agree. Willie, you had a thought there?
Yeah, I felt the same way about Brew McCoy. I had him a little bit further down, probably about 3 spots on my personal list. But then, I was looking at a couple of guys. I was like, I can't just pass him up sitting here.
So you felt the opposite about him.
Yeah, I felt the opposite about him. But then, the next pick, the next wide receiver off the board was Farouk. But Farouk was still further down than McCoy. So, things change as you go through all of these drafts, and you have to be willing to change.
Oh, 100%. Speaking of changes and being willing to take risks, tight ends. Still got a couple on the board that are kind of surprising. So, Jeremy, tight ends that kind of stick out to you as probably should have been drafted. Anybody stick out to you? I got a couple here.
Yeah, just for fun, Traore, at Mississippi State now. I mean, that could be a fun pick just to see if he pans out, maybe playing wide receiver.
Assuming he gets his waiver.
Yeah, assuming that. I mean, again, that's kind of your 28th, 29th, 30th round pick. The one at the very top is Culp from Washington. I mean, he's a veteran who's consistent. He's not exciting, but, he can get you the 4 catches and 40 yards a game that you might need, just to get some points. But, otherwise, no, there's nobody big that's standing out to me.
Willie, what about you, man? Any tight ends kind of stick out to you as probably should have been taken?
I figured someone would, try go ahead and maybe it's the jump up that no one likes, but I figured Joshua Simon would come off the board. Jay Mill talked about, I think it was Westover, but Westover or Culp, one of those guys should have been drafted. Guy Jake Roberts out of Baylor.
Roberts.
Jake Roberts out of Baylor. And then the last one who I really like is Latu out of Nevada. I think he's going to have some upside this year, and I probably would have taken him if I didn't take Stogner.
Latu's not a common last name. Is he related to Cameron at all?
I don't know.
That'd be kind of interesting.
Say it one more time.
Is he related to Cameron Latu, the Alabama tight end?
I do believe so.
Oh, shoot.
In some way or fashion, I do believe so.
NFL bloodlines now. Whoop, whoop. 2 tight ends that stick out to me. One is in a system that we've seen absolutely destroy with the tight end in the past, and that is Wyoming. Trayton Welsh still on the board here. I'm kind of surprised nobody took the very high floor tight end right there, in my opinion. And then another fun one that I've seen people take shots on. Specifically surprised Ethan didn't take the shot on this guy, but Harold Fannin, the redshirt freshman tight end there over at Bowling Green. I'm surprised nobody took the shot there. And then Everybody else, nobody really surprises me. I'm not shocked at all by Joshua Simon not making it. Like, he's at best the third best tight end they have on that roster right now. So
well, I feel the same. I honestly feel the same way about him as people were trying to hype up the Jeremy. What's the kid's name? Last year that was supposed to be. I want to say either South Carolina. That was supposed to be the big stud, and he ended up flaming out and had to transfer.
Gilbert, you're talking about Gilbert?
No, not well. Everybody, no, not Gilbert. It'll come to me later on tonight, I'm sure. But he actually, I think he got drafted earlier. So, but there's always going to be a few tight ends that just have that. It could be a wide receiver hybrid. Everybody wants to jump on them, and then they don't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it was Knox. It'll come
Stogner went to South Carolina last year and didn't do anything.
I'm talking about Trigg. Is who I'm talking about.
Oh well, just had to bring up that sore subject again. Appreciate that, Willie.
It's Trigg is who I'm talking about. I mean, we always get these guys that we think are going to be the next big thing, and it just doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, fair enough. Well,
but Jared, on that note, is Gilbert worth taking at Nebraska? That's your guy from Georgia?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. So, I'm rooting for Eric Gilbert as a person. As a CFF player, I'm not touching him.
Okay.
If he does well this year and provides value for Nebraska and everything like that, awesome. I'm not taking that shot right now. Again, it sounds like he's still got a lot to figure out over there. He's with a good staff. That's what's really important and everything. He's got a lot to figure out. But I'm rooting for him more on that front than anything else. But yeah, don't draft him in CFF. Just don't worry about it. If you're gonna go after a Nebraska tight end, Thomas Fedone. That's another one I don't think went off on the board here. That's somebody you guys need to keep an eye out. He was the number one tight end in his class, and he's just chilling out over there at Nebraska.
I drafted that kid before he got injured, as when he was a freshman, and so yeah, I'm real high on him. He just hasn't had a chance yet.
No, fair enough. Well, gentlemen, this was an absolutely phenomenal show. Going a little long here tonight, but that's totally okay. I had an absolute blast. I'm sure everybody who was in the chat asking questions had a great time as well. Really appreciate all of you guys listening. Real quick, J Mill and Willie B, just kind of go over real quick again. What are you guys planning on doing before the start of the season, as well as what are you planning on doing in-season content-wise?
Go for it, Jeremy.
Oh, well, in season, we've kind of get into a routine where, we're covering, all the best performances throughout the season week by week. People seem to really like our waiver wire draft that will come out every Monday. Prior to the season, we're really looking forward to the Kings Classic, getting to compete against folks like yourself and the King John Lobb and Froton and everyone else.
Are both of you going to be there in Canton?
Willie will not be there, but he hopefully will have some.
I have to move my youngest has to go to college, so I got to move him in.
Yep, understandable.
Yeah, and he's also very busy. Getting little venture off the ground that we teased a few months back. I'll go ahead and say it. We're looking to get a CFF T-shirt line off the ground, and we're going to probably be able to announce that once we get to the Kings Classic here in a couple weeks.
Oh, dude, that's going to be absolutely awesome.
Yeah.
Are you guys making the T-shirts, or is it more of just?
Yeah. His background is in promotional, items, like that. So we decided, look, the best way to really service the market is, and expand the brand, the CFF brand, that is not our brand, and really help it grow is to get some merchandise out there. Not even with CFFlists, but just with CFF in general. So we're gonna have a lot of CFF themed T-shirts, for people to buy.
Remind me to get you guys in contact with some people afterwards. So,
okay.
Even still, again, I'm excited about the Kings Classic. We got the FSGA, the Fantasy Sports and Gaming Association, first ever college fantasy draft this Tuesday, live on the Better Sports Network. It's hosted by Eric Froton. A bunch of us in the industry, a good mix of CFF and NFL fantasy experts going at each other for that. That's going to be a ton of fun this upcoming week. And like you mentioned, Jeremy, the Kings Classic draft in just 2 weeks from now. I can't believe we're already that close to the season and everything. Somebody did ask me earlier this week if we will have a live draft that weekend on this channel. Unfortunately, that's just not going to be possible. I can't bring all my equipment up there to Canton with me. So watch the Kings Classic draft instead that weekend. That's going to be your homework for you guys. Jeremy, did I cut you off? Did you have more to say in terms of what you guys are offering?
No. We just, we'll have all of any list we can come up with. We're going to be throwing it out there.
Yes, sir.
Like I said, we're really relieved. All of our player capsules and top positional lists are done. So we get to have a little more fun kind of freelancing and freestyling it for the next month, but all the hard work is done. We made it a goal to get all of our rankings out before August so that people could have them for their home drafts that should all be starting up right about now. So it's all out there, and we'll just have fun kind of redoing the rankings as we get closer to the start of the season.
Yes, sir. Alrighty, gentlemen, you guys have been absolutely awesome. Everybody in the chat has been awesome as well. Again, we have lots of great live shows, but again, this is definitely one of the best that we've had this season. So thank you, gentlemen, for that. Thank you guys in the chat. Again, we'll be back next Sunday with another guest. Again, check out this week's CTN episode tomorrow morning. We're covering tight ends, defenses, and kickers. So lots of stuff we don't normally get to talk about. So definitely tune into that. Find out, is there actually any rhyme or reason to drafting kickers in CFF? You'll find out tomorrow. Anyway, it's been awesome, y'all. Really appreciate you guys listening and hope you guys have a wonderful and fantastic week. See you guys next Sunday.
All right. Thanks, everybody.